Okay, we're recording.
Call a meeting of the Town Finance Committee to order May 12th, 6 o'clock. Start a motion for the minutes from the May 7th meeting.
Peter, do you have to note that we're doing this via Zoom because of the COVID stuff?
Do we need to do that, Valerie?
Yes, I'll just say very quickly, because we are not allowed to congregate, we're handling, per the governor's executive order, remote means for participating, and a physical quorum is not present. This video recording will be available for public review and inspection. So noted. Okay, go ahead.
Now, motion for the minutes of last meeting.
Motion to accept the minutes from May 7th as distributed to the committee.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Guys have it. Assuming no correspondence, Valerie?
I actually was not at town hall today, but nobody gets to go in there, so no.
And old business is just we're continuing a review of the budget
And articles, yep.
and articles. I don't know if to start, is it better to, I know there was a discussion on the school on Friday to start off there, or wait for Ed on that?
It would be great for you to wait for Ed, but I can say that we did have that conversation. Ed made it clear in no uncertain terms to those folks that they really need to reach out and start their finance discussions with the town of Dayton in February, and that we, I made comments about needing more communication and stable communication, that we can always count on the fact that we're going to be hearing from them, and to have them in our process for budgeting, and that way the first time we're all talking about the budget is not when they're at the finance committee meeting. I would say it got off to a rocky start, but overall it was productive, and I think we left the conversation knowing what was expected. I want Ed here for the rest of it, because he did say exactly what the town was gonna, this is all we're gonna entertain, and that's it. And I'm sure he'll have more to say. I'm giving you very much a cliff notes of that conversation.
Okay.
Who attended that? Anybody from Rehoboth or representative?
Chairman Cooper, Paul Kitchen, myself, Dr. Azar, and Ed. But no Rehoboth, no Board of Selectmen or Finance Committee, no one like that.
Thank you.
Just a general question to Chris on the excess capacity page.
Sure.
Chris, is the state aid, is that reduced by the 10% as it sits, or is that still?
No, that's last year's actually, Peter, that's last year's, I'm sorry, that was the governor's figures prior to COVID-19 at the end of January, based on his original request. Mallory made a side note indicating what the 10% reduction would represent. I think it's about $843,000 in total.
$843 would be the gross.
That would be the reduced number, correct?
Okay.
Mallory, can you comment on your note about the snow and ice free cash?
Sure. I'm going rogue and recommending that we generally what we do is, oh, sorry, I'm in like a screen share. Generally what we do is carry over the deficit into the next fiscal year. When I was in West Bridgewater, we never did that. We always transferred money out of the current fiscal year at the special town meeting before the annual to clear that debt and go forward. I talked to Ed about this. I don't think he's wild about the idea, but it was something that Chris Laviolette and I discussed, and especially in this climate, I like the fact or the thought of going into a troublesome fiscal year and a troublesome road with no debt and not have to raise it on the recap. so we have a couple of balls up in the air there, but I believe that we can fund, it's 41,000. That's a rounding. It's just under $41,000. And so we could get that. We put a spending freeze in. We're pretty frugal anyway to begin with. So I think that we could get some lines that could cover that. And I've asked at the department head meeting that department heads, if they have lines that they know they're not going to expend for the rest of the fiscal year, to flag them. And Chris Laviolette will look at those as well as I, and make some recommendations. But it is different, and it is something that you have not done before. But what it ends up doing is taking away from whatever your free cash would fall to in the fall.
So it's 42,000, so it would be roughly half of that 10%.
Take coming out of
The reduction.
out of the local aid, or yeah. I understand if you don't want any risky maneuvers this year. It's not even that risky. It's just deviating from what you've normally done.
It's basically just pulling free cash forward. If we transfer from.
Right, you're gonna take current fiscal year lines that have funds in them, transferred over to snow and ice, and you're gonna start at zero. It's like paying off the debt and then you start anew and you don't owe anything. Generally what we do is raise it on the recap. Chris Laviolette, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, so the risk that you run with the deficit, right? I mean, so legally we have to fund that deficit. So town meeting could always vote not to fund that deficit out of the current year operating budget. But then it just becomes a mechanical process in the setting of the tax rate. It's automatic. Town meeting at that effectively gets no say in the matter during the setting of the tax rate process for fiscal 21. So one way or another, we have to pay the bill. It's whether you want to pay from it, you want to pay with it with current resources, or you want to pay it with next year's taxation. And, you know, based on the value, or based on the amount of the deficit right now, I just think you've got enough resources available in the current year budget, potentially, to pay for it without having to raise it in next year's tax rate.
Puts us in a better financial position for FY21.
I mean, it has the effect of lowering free cash, you know, when we close we close the books at June 30th this year, but it also increases your excess. It effectively would have a positive impact on your excess capacity in fiscal 21, if that's important to folks. In other words, that excess capacity being the gap between what you plan on spending and what you actually need to raise in taxation. So there is sort of a whiplash effect in a positive way, I suppose, for fiscal 21 if you pay the bill now rather than waiting until fiscal 21.
So yeah, it's that kind of. That was a lot of big words. Due to the fact we funded the 2019 prior year deficit out of 2020, are we going to virtually artificially inflate the tax rate in 2020 and deflate it in 2021?
That's effectively what you would do, yes. Yeah, you'd end up deflating the tax rate in fiscal 21.
So then when we get to 21 and we have the deficit, either we can defer it like we always do to 2022 or pay it off again in 2021 based on.
I mean, it is kind of a risky. I mean, historically, you have, effectively kicked the can to the next fiscal year. So you run the risk now of the winter of 2021 to 22 being a bad winter like it was a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden that deficit jumps to, say, $150,000 or $200,000. And again, it's anybody's guess right now as to what next winter is going to be like right now. If I'm not that kind of a betting man, but if I were that good at it, I'd be a very wealthy guy. I probably wouldn't have to work anymore if I could make that prediction.
Based on the way 2020 is going, it's going to be the winter of all winters.
It probably will. It would just stand to reason. Murphy's Law.
Picking up while we're done.
Hi, Nancy. I was just calling you. I'm sorry. I just got your call.
Yeah, I was on before 6 o'clock, signed in. All of a sudden, I lost everything, and even the screen went dark. And when I looked at that tower, the modem,
Yeah.
I was some lights were out, so,
Oh, it went to sleep, I think, because if you leave it on, like if you leave a computer on and aren't near it, it'll go to sleep to save energy.
oh,
And
no,
it's
no. I came in and turned it on, signed in, got the screen, and then the modem itself, you know how all the lights are lit or they flash on and off? I lost some of them
No
completely,
one
so.
fucking cares, Nancy.
So, we were just talking about, Selectman Goulart, just to catch you up, we were just talking about the idea of paying the deficit for snow and ice out of current FY20 through transfers, and we would do that at special town meeting. And so we were just weighing the pros and cons and describing that to the finance committee. That's
Chris,
what
what's the projected balance that we will end the fiscal year with?
In terms of what's available right now?
Yeah, if today was June 29th and we paid everything we know about, and I'm not talking about that vacation thing or ice and snow, or any of that stuff, what's the projected balance in the budget?
I just rough guesstimate, and please don't hold me to this right now, but I'm guessing that you're going to close we're going to have about $1 million unspent in the budget, and I think that's directly related to the spending freeze. That's my best guesstimate at this time right
Yeah.
now. So if you paid everything,
Historically, Chris, since the for lack of a better term, since the budget allocation process at the high school was, let's say, adjusted properly, historically, those are the kind of numbers we would look at.
okay.
that
All right.
million account for us spending the $1 million we still need to send to the school for this year?
That would include, that would include this, the $1 million, and that would include holding back. So let's say we didn't spend any money on the current or prior year articles like that I pointed out today. There's another $750,000 that would carry forward that effectively you could not spend out of available funds because you'd be carrying them forward into fiscal 21.
Right.
But I
I'm
still
only
think
talking, I'm only talking the town budget, nothing else.
that would be just town budget plus the articles.
No
It's included
articles.
in the grand total.
No articles, just the
All right,
budget.
I still going to guesstimate about $1 million is going to be unspent.
Okay, and historically, you know, that could be.
Okay.
So doing this is virtually the same thing the school district's trying to do with the hardware purchase they're looking to do. The IT.
Yeah, bring some things back into this year and
Yeah, again, I think, the idea is, for us accountants, it's the matching principle. You want to match expenses to revenues in a particular fiscal year. So, not to bore everybody with accounting, methodology or accounting theory. The idea is let's match this year's expenses with this year's available money rather than taking this year's expenses and pushing them off until next year, especially when you have the resources. It makes a lot of sense. That way fiscal 21 is as clean as can possibly be, not, where there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Quite honestly, I think, as far as any state revenue projections or any worry about property taxes, it's more about the timing of the collection, I think, more than anything right now. Because one way or another, you're going to collect your real estate taxes. I hate saying this right now, but ultimately, if a lot of fiscal 21 real estate taxes go unpaid, Mary's left with the proposition of having to place everybody in tax title. Not that that's a really palatable solution for many of the taxpayers, but you also want to make sure that the town's right to collect those taxes is perfected and protected. And really, because we are a cash business as opposed to an accrual business, it's really imperative that we collect that money more than anything else. If we were if you were accrual based, we wouldn't be having this conversation as far as the impact on revenue.
Well, that tax title would also be long-term. She would have to borrow in anticipation of taxes, so we'd have cash to pay bills with.
Potentially, yeah. You do have that, there is there may come that necessity, especially if collections are slow after the first and second quarter, this August and then in November. That'll I think after the first quarter real estate tax bill goes out for fiscal 21, I believe you'll have a pretty good idea of what you can expect for the rest of the fiscal year. So if it lags, sorry, go ahead now.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask if we do take care of the deficit, that would mean that we ultimately have the ability to use, like you free up space on the levy, I guess.
That's correct.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we could accomplish a lot without going too much on taxes, with staying, kind of an even keel on the tax rate. It just is. I know this is only $41,000, but it's the right kind of money. It's the right sum that we could just take care of. We could just handle. It's not
Absolutely.
it wasn't a terrible winter.
How do we set the snow and ice budget? Is that a set amount based on?
Yeah, you never raise it. If you
Yeah,
raise it, it ends up coming back to bite you because you get less out of an emergency if the governor declares a state of emergency.
Scott, the problem is we used to be at $35,000 for 100 years. And we decided to go to 50,000. And the problem is if you don't spend the 50, you can't spend it on anything else. And you are locked into that number. So conservatively, when it was a big step to go from 35,000 to 50,000, and now we've been at 50 for this period of time. So it's kind of a historical thing. I can tell you in all the years, well, 19 years, Ed's been the chairman, and all the times that I served with him, there was only 1 year we did not overexpend the snow removal budget. We had a little bit of money left. It rained all winter, basically, but it was a long time ago.
That's kind of what I was getting at. So if we're decreasing the tax levy, we're decreasing our liability on tax levy next year. If we increase it by a percentage or two to cover the potential deficit for next year, we're effectively doing the same thing. We're just putting it in 2021 funds instead of covering a deficit. That's what I was getting at. But you're right. It's uncertainty. You're better off just putting what you need.
If I may, and Nancy, I wasn't aware of this, but I'm pretty certain that if there's money left over in the snow and ice budget at the end of the year, in other words, if we're to the good, it's like any other budget. It becomes a potential funding source. There is no restriction on being able to use that available money to take care of potentially other budgetary deficits.
No, it would close out to free cash. But
You don't have to.
Well, what we were told, that's why we locked it in at 35 for so many years. They
Your
told us it could
only
close to free
issue.
cash.
Sorry, the only
That's how
issue
we
with
could spend
the
it.
snow and ice deficit is you don't want to lower the snow and ice budget. You always want to increase it, because the moment you decrease it and you overspend it, you no longer have any emergency spending provisions available to you. So if you went from 50 back to 35 and we spent 65 next year, you'd have no emergency spending provision. You wouldn't be allowed to carry that. You wouldn't be allowed to carry that snow and ice deficit forward on the recap. You'd have to fund it from the available budget. That's what the rub is with the snow and ice. So you can always increase it. You just never want to decrease it.
Well, I can tell you, unless the rules have changed, we would not increase it for all those years. Where's Ed, by the way?
He's coming. He'll be here in about 10 minutes.
Oh, hey, did anybody plan to cover that DR school committee meeting?
Yes, we talked on it briefly. Mallory gave a brief update, and then Ed, when he comes on, is going to give a more formal
Okay.
update.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so basically we're not going to increase this year's over the 50, but by the same token, if we can pull some of that back into this year, even the reserve account, we have 47,000 in the reserve, we could conceivably take care of it on our own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just one question before Ed said to start going on some of the budgets, but what's free cash before we start?
Free cash existing, $212,000. It should be on the excess capacity worksheet
It's
to the right.
I have 219. Is that wrong?
No, that's probably right.
I got 219, 148.
That sounds
That's what's
correct.
that's what's on the excess capacity sheet. So the red font, that's me giving you some information. And Chris too.
Thank you.
So, like you said, Ed's going to be on in like 5 minutes, but he did say to start. So I figure we'll just kind of go through some of the easy ones. CJ, I'm going to bounce, but I'm assuming you'll stick with me.
Would you like me to screen share, or are you guys all set?
I could use the screen share. I can't speak for the rest of you, but it would be helpful to me just for reference purposes.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
So start with 113 town meetings.
Thank you.
Oh, yep, no problem. Yep, okay.
So we're going to do this by grouping, so by category? Like we always do?
Easier.
Or you could
We-
hold
we've-
certain ones.
Yeah, we've been doing general government. The only thing, like, even like Board of Selectmen, I'd rather hold off that till Ed comes back. Any of them that there might be some open issue until he comes the next couple of minutes, but. Is that all right?
Moderator, it's an easy one.
So I'm sorry, I'm not clear. Are we going to do budget by budget? So like 113, make a motion to recommend 113 as, or are we going to
I
go
think-
general
I think
government?
probably do it that way rather than go general government, just because that way, like I said, selectmen, I think he needs to have some input in that.
I agree. I think that's fine.
113, if there's any questions or comments, 113 or a motion.
I make a motion to recommend budget 113 town meeting as requested by the department.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? All opposed? Ayes have it. 114, town moderator.
Motion to approve. As shown.
So there is a difference in the TA and BOS on this. And I know last year we had left the moderator as the only stipend that went up to 2%.
Right.
I level funded that one, basically because it is no longer the same one. And I thought it was a good time, better than having somebody that's actually in the office. But it's
I agree.
measly, it's $11, but.
No,
It's not about the $11, right?
Yeah. So is there a recommendation by the Board of Selectmen the Board of Selectmen recommended the 596, or did they evaluate this stipend for this position?
No, it's elected, so it's technically set by the finance committee, but they did approve the 2% increase. I don't want to speak for them, I'm sorry.
No.
I don't know if the Chairman Pacheco wants to say anything. The only reason I'm going to be okay with the 2% for this specific thing is I don't think we have a moderator right now, and I think that $11 could go a long way towards attracting someone to want to be a moderator.
Valuable $11.
I would even go the opposite way in that we froze everybody else, I think, at the 19 levels. Do we
Right.
cut it another $11 so that now that is on the same plane as all the other stipends?
I recommend that as well. I would recommend rolling this back to the original stipend value, which was established whenever it was established.
So we talking FY19? 573.68.
No, we're talking, I think, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking going back to
It was
what the stipend was originally set for. The moderator, and Nancy, you could probably answer how long the moderator has, Mr. McKeon, served the town here.
30-some years.
Yeah.
You're not
Right.
going to go back there.
That's fine.
That's not when we
fine.
started doing
Probably
increase.
we
paid
need
in
to-
chickens back then.
But we need to come to an amount that, the person who fills this position shouldn't be getting shouldn't be recognized for Mr. McKeon's accomplishments.
I agree completely, and I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, Ken, I make a motion, we
Yes.
set the salary for the moderator at $500.
So we set this, Nancy, that's
Well,
what.
I make a motion, we recommend to the FinCom that they set the salary for moderator at $500.
Second,
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The ayes have it.
Good catch, FinCom.
I make a motion that FinCom recommends the Board of Selectmen recommendation of $500 for the salary for this moderator for fiscal year 2020,
So moved.
2021, whatever year we're in.
So moved.
There was a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? All opposed? Guys have it?
Peter, can I ask you a general question?
Yes.
So, as elected officials come and go, so to speak, not so much for positions like moderator, because the salary is only $500, but for actual paid elected department head positions, are those positions that once someone retires, those salaries can be quote unquote reanalyzed or reset?
Yes,
My
they can.
opinion, yes, yeah.
Yes, they can.
Right, similar to any other position, right? You're going to bring, the current elected officials are being paid a certain amount based on experience and longevity, and somebody else coming in is not or shouldn't be rewarded for that longevity. And maybe they do have the same experience, but certainly not walking in and guaranteed the same amount, I would think. My opinion.
Thank you, Peter.
Right, so we'll skip the Board of Selectmen. Finance Committee's next, 131. Oh, I'm looking on the individual.
124, I think, Peter.
You want to go to 124?
Ed has joined us.
Okay, great.
You're
Peter.
Sorry about that.
Hey, Ed, we already cut somebody's salary. You'll be proud of us.
Oh, very good. Sorry I'm late. We had a rather long water district meeting that got into a rather interesting discussion about credit cards. So,
Well, we're on solid footing tonight here, Ed. We're starting on a good note.
oh, good. We like that. We like that because as I texted to our town administrator earlier today, if this meeting was at 3 o'clock today, we'd have cut everything because I would hate everybody.
So Ed, we just went through a couple of the easy ones, 113 and 114.
Okay.
We put the moderator back to roughly 2016 level.
Okay. So I had shared that I don't want to jump in. Why don't you guys just keep going? I'll jump in where I have to jump in. You guys seem to be on a roll already.
We were holding 122 until you got here.
Oh, so that's
The floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
all right. So I just want to give everybody an update of my conversation with the superintendent on Friday. Mallory had the pleasure of joining us. We had a rather lengthy discussion about not only the budget, but the formula. And they did use the same formula that they have used. It was percent of budget for the elementary schools, and then it was based on student population at the high school. So the formula-wise, although I'm not sure if I totally agree that they used Governor 1 with the new minimum contribution on it, which will probably change in August when minimum contribution comes up because we won't have an approved budget. So who knows where the minimum contribution will eventually shake out. But I did share with them our concerns about the decreasing enrollment over the last 3 years, the increase of the budget and where we were in our process, as well as feeling like the left out part, that there was no discussion about where we were in the last 3 months and where we were in our preparation versus what we could afford and the increases that we're taking in other education lines in conjunction with what their request was. So as someone said, I kind of went up one side and down the other of Dr. Azar, because I was frustrated, and I know some other members are frustrated too about the communication to Dayton from the schools. So what I shared with him from a financial standpoint is I don't think, looking at where we are and what our projections are, that we can get to that 1096 number. I think a good starting point is maybe a little bit above what we approved last year, not what we actually spent last year. In combination of looking at what our increase at BP is, as well as the requested increase, we're right around where we have been for the last few years, $300,000 or $400,000 incremental to the education side of the budget. So when we get to that, I have shared that with them. I don't know how they took it. I don't know if they'll go back and try and, I know they have a school committee meeting tonight. I don't know if they'll go back and try and tweak it a little bit to get closer to like that 10.8 number, which is operating and capital together. I think it's a 10.96 is their request. And I told them, I think from a fiscally sound management standpoint, that we could probably be around 10.8, but we'll see after we get through everything tonight. So that was the school update that I wanted to bring back. Does anybody have any additional questions on that? Anybody?
Nope.
Mallory, I don't know if you want to add any input. I know you had a good earpiece going, listening to the whole thing, which started 12 minutes late, by the way.
Not on us, though. Not because of us.
So,
Ed, did Rehoboth approve the split?
No,
This?
they haven't recommended anything.
yeah, I don't
Okay.
even think they have a town meeting set, like currently. There's no date.
Canceled it.
Does Rehoboth know that Dayton is saying we can't afford the split that's out there right now?
They will, because Kathy Cooper was on the call.
Okay.
I did just want to add a little piece of information I got, and I know things are very fluid on Beacon Hill right now, so I don't think any of this you can really take home, but I did join a Zoom call with State Rep Pat Haddad last night, and she basically said that the best we can expect is level funding for things like Chapter 70, Chapter 90 for FY21, so I don't know if that changes our analysis of what we can and can't afford, but I think it is something worthwhile that the best we're probably going to be able to do in a perfect world, ideal world, is level funded from what we got last year. So,
Yeah, I was on that call too, Brett.
oh yeah, that's right.
With Carol and Pat, yeah. That's Carol does those every week, I think, with somebody different.
She does.
Yeah.
She
So
get us on.
yeah. Yeah, so that's where it was on the school side. And then just in the overall budget, I was thinking and looking at some of what we've gone over for the last couple of weeks, and we'll go through it tonight on the individual budgets, but I kind of throw this to the selectmen for their thoughts. I know as we went through everyone knows where the stand is on stipends, that I personally think that we should freeze them at the current level that we have in this fiscal year. And we'll talk about the individual ones. But I really got confused on some of the things as we went through the budget as I reflect back, because I heard a lot of talk about that we didn't really end up using the merit-based, and we went with the 2% pretty much across the board to where we were at 2%, and the elected officials back there is down to 2% to match it. And I looked at some of the extra stipends that we've added, and I have become, thanks to one of our members, have become like numb to figuring out this whole stipend thing and getting it back under control. That instead of adding 2 additional stipends, why are we not just looking at using that 2% number to, and I think it's specifically on the police chief's one, that it's 1%, but then we're giving them another $1,000 somewhere else. Why is it not just following the 2%? If we're not going to follow the merit base all the way through, why are we kind of circumventing it a little bit, in my opinion?
Ed, we are following it. What we ended up with, we took, Mrs. Aaronstein and I came up with a system where we could take the ratings from the evaluations. And in discussing it with the board, at first we had a fixed amount. If you got above 80%, you would get X dollars. Below that, you would get Y dollars. But the board discussed it, and it was decided that the fixed dollar amount was in many cases less than what a 2% increase would be. So then we discussed it and said, okay, based on the evaluations, the 80% is a solid math calculation. If your rating is 80% or higher, we will say that's a 2% increase on your base salary. If the rating was less than 80%, you would get a 1% increase. That's exactly what we did. The chief got 1% because his total score was.
May I just add one thing? I think, I'm not sure exactly what, excuse me, you're alluding to, Mr. Chairman, but there are other employees who have a quote unquote sort of guaranteed 2%. And so that's kind of the predicament where we're in, where we haven't fleshed out how to make a completely system that's completely, on par for all of those eligible employees.
Because basically, as I look at it, you basically said you're either our high performers are getting 2% and somebody else is getting 1%. Well, that means you have 95% of your people are high performers because everybody's getting 2% outside of the one person that's getting 1%.
There's more than one.
There's two.
Getting back to that stipend you mentioned, there was $500 stipend added for overseeing animal control and $500 added for overseeing the harbor master. Now, that assignment was given, I'm going to guess 3-4 years ago. When that assignment was given, there were no dollars attached to it, and there have never been dollars attached to that up until we had this discussion this year. Personally, I really think we ought to put animal control back under the Board of Health with no additional stipends for anybody. And we should have the harbor master report to the town administrator with no additional stipends. I don't see a reason to assign them to the police chief. I've looked into some other communities to see how animal control and harbor masters are, who they report to or responsibility. And it's kind of a toss-up. But if the feeling was it added more work, it didn't add it 3 years ago and it hasn't added it succeeding years, but if it does take time, then I just say send it back where it came from. We'll save $1,000.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss those as we get through those budgets. I just wanted to lay my couple of things on the table that I had as I went through. So Mallory, as we go through these, and I didn't want to come in and jeopardize the whole meeting because I know you guys had got off to a good solid start. As we go through these, has those updates that we discussed along the way, the Board of Health changes and all that, have those been changed in the departmental requests, or are we going to do those as part of our recommendations?
So I changed so there's 2 requests. I only knew about one. And we changed that request. That was the additional hours that you would discuss at your last meeting. There was another letter that came in May 8th. And again, I wasn't at the office today, so I apologize because things are a little disjointed when that happens. But there was another letter, and if I can bring it up here. Oh, I gotta get it. So he sent over something else about the animal control line or something else. That has not been entered in here because I just saw it yesterday.
Okay. All right. So the can you just click on the excess capacity page? I don't know if you guys reviewed it, but I asked you to put what was in stabilization on this page.
Yes. Sorry. There it is.
Just as everyone could have a starting point on our stabilization balances. Capital is at 925, you see there, and we have 1.44 million in general stabilization. And I think the free cash was on the page that had the special articles the other day. It's like 219,000.
Yep.
So can you just what our starting point, and this doesn't, I don't think we had anything in the special articles off onto this page. So if you scroll down, our starting point here is 300,000. Or no, we're $93,000 over the levy limit to start right now, plus whatever special articles we choose to do is raise and appropriate. I believe last year we had determined to put one of the police cruisers every year would be raise and appropriate because that was going to be an every year purchase. So there may be some of those. So we'll go through the budgets and do our recommendations, and then we'll see where that number comes out. And then we can see what we could possibly do as raise and appropriate out of the special articles.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So now let's get back to where you guys were.
122.
We have 122, Board of Selectmen. Ed.
Okay. So I was thinking, do we want to go individual by individual, or do we want to, I think in the past what we did was we would go down, and then if there was a budget we wanted to hold, so I mean, Mallory, you can just go, if nobody wants to hold the budget, it will go with what it will follow the Board of Selectmen recommendation. And then we will make adjustments from that, only on the ones that we think we need to make adjustments on. But so this one, the question I guess is here is, so we want to hold on 122. We'll go through all the general government ones and then go back to the ones that we held and then vote. So I'd like to hold that one for a minute, hold the town administrator for a minute, because I think we have to have the discussion on those additional hours. Anybody have any questions on 131? 132? Any questions? Any questions on 135?
Can we scroll over one bit to the left so we can see the department requests as well? Thank you.
Sorry about that.
130, you can go down, Mallory. Good evening, Kevin.
Kevin, get say hi.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. 141 will hold because I think we want to make have a discussion. We want to do something on the stipends on that one. Nope.
Sorry.
Ooh,
Oh no.
that's really big.
This is because I'm sharing. Oh my gosh. All right, hold on. Hang tight.
Unshare and reshare.
Sorry, everybody. We're making such good progress.
Just so you know, we have an ultimate goal being done by 8 o'clock.
They
Mr.
laugh.
Chairman, you may want to
Really?
consider hanging up on the meeting right now. We were doing really good before you were.
Hey, Ed, is this like betting on
Just
when the
saying.
town meeting will end as far as financial goes?
Yeah. No, it'll get quicker after this, Chris.
I'm kidding. I was just.
If Mallory could get the ship.
I'm sorry. I'm going. Sorry. There we go.
There we go.
So you held assessors?
Yep. Any questions on 145?
Crazy.
146? 140, what's next? 151? What was that? How much have we spent on town council this year?
I can tell you right now, 1 second. I've been tracking it. I think it's like 22.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. 155? 158? 161? Keep going, Mel. 162, 163, 171, 175.
I had a question on 175.
So hold 175. Is somebody making a list?
I am. I'm actually writing it right next to the budget.
Okay.
And 176.
$179,
The new budget request.
$189,
What's 179?
Agricultural Commission. It's a new budget.
Oh, all right. I'm using my book, so I don't have a page for that.
So you had it under your new request section.
Okay.
We have since assigned it a number.
189,
So
190,
hold
192.
that one then. Hold that agriculture, because what are we?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one, Scott. 192. 193. And that's all of total general government. So,
In town reports.
195.
195. So I would entertain a motion to follow the Board of Selectmen recommendations for all budgets with the exceptions of the ones that we put hold numbers on.
And the ones we already voted on. So
And
we
the
already-
ones you already voted on, yes. So I don't know if in the interim, someone could plug those in while we have our discussions on those specific ones, then we could have those recommendations completely done.
Can I just make a note under registrations? I'm sorry, give CJ a little bit more time, but under registrations, my recommendations give a $2,000 increase on one line to account for the Finance Committee's request, registration, about the early voting. You had made mention that we need to accommodate for early voting all the time instead of having a transfer. I don't know if you remember that. That was probably April 30th. Yay. Here it is. For the salary for election workers. Now with COVID-19, that might be different with mail-in and that popularity, but I just wanted to bring that out.
All right, so put that as a hold and we'll do that one as a hold.
Madam Administrator, can I ask you a question about that?
Always.
Do people who work the polls, the election workers, do they have to be paid? Can they volunteer if they choose to?
I think so.
This is just a general question. It's not,
I
we've
think-
always paid them. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think, because I think anybody can technically refuse to be paid. I mean, we had a member of the Finance Committee who chose never to take his stipend ever. And he was on the board for probably 15 years.
And that member wasn't you, Ed? No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
it was Mr. Copeland.
Aw.
Ed, Wally Wood was the other one.
Yep. So, all right, so I would entertain a motion to recommend as, I think we have a motion and a second already. All those in favor? All those opposed, the ayes have it. So is, CJ, are you plugging him in for the FinCom pay side?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so if we can just go back to the hold ones, and we'll start on the hold ones from the top and make those recommendations as we go.
So first hold is Board of Selectmen.
So the difference is on the additional hours on the
Assistant.
and that is split between town administrator and Board of Selectmen, or is it all in the Board of Selectmen?
No, we have everything in the Board of Selectmen for that position, but the three of us work together and do everything we need to support the Selectmen.
So can I ask the Board of Selectmen what their rationale for not recommending it?
For not recommending it?
Or
Right. Because the
recommending
Board of
the-
Selectmen did not recommend the additional hours, correct?
That is additional hours that Mallory's asking recommending.
I'm asking for more.
You're recommending more?
I'm
Yeah,
recommending
well,
30, the selectmen are recommending 24.
I mean, I can tell you what I thought, just personally, not, you know, I'm not going to speak for the board. I would definitely default to Chairman Pacheco on that. But I didn't think when I took the vote, I did want to increase the hours, but I wasn't thinking about how much time I've been putting into like administering the website, helping out with the social media. And I'll give you an example. I spent several hours over the weekend putting up the Code Red stuff and working with Revise. It is a lot of work. We just don't really talk about it. We just get it done. And I think having a centralized person to help with things like grants, all the different grant applications and balls we're juggling in the air, but also to be that focal point when someone needs help with the website, I think will be invaluable. So I'm going to actually support the town administrator's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I want to jump back to the conversation. I think that was part of what we talked about with the Board of Health last week, right? Was some of the things that they talked about by not doing the newsletter and their communications would be helpful, that the quote website administrator would pick up some of that slack. So we're going to reduce part of that. So maybe that could fund a portion of what the town administrator is asking.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat that? So can everyone mute yourselves if you're not speaking? Because it's very hard to hear with the noise in the background.
Sorry, thanks, Brett. So what I was saying was, I think part of the discussion on the increased hours was actually part of that overall discussion with the Board of Health last week. Because I'm with you on the additional website stuff, things communication-wise that we don't do right now, that I think if we are gonna enable the additional hours to cover our communications, not just website management of the Code Red program alongside the Board of Health and emergency preparedness, that the job has gotten, and you know, I know we talked about it when we added the position last year, that you know, we were grossly understaffed from an administrative standpoint for what Mallory and Karen were trying to do, and all of the things that are going to be required as we move through this whole pandemic, that there's a whole nother level that I think we need to look from an administrative standpoint, that this position won't only be assisting. I know the budget's under the Board of Selectmen, but it will be helping and assisting other departments. So I think it's a push and pull, because I know we're tight and we have to figure out where the funding is going to come from. But you know, from what Mallory's put out in the additional personnel and the stuff that she sent out that the person's going to be doing, I think there is plenty of stuff to do. Let's see, I support it, but at the end of the day, if we have to make cuts, additional hours is going to be one of those things that I think we have to look at. But I think there's a good rationale for it right now.
I guess I just wanted to add very briefly, I suspect my board colleagues want to chime in that, you know, right now, we do field the requests from the other departments, but what's happening is it's all done in-house. And my concern isn't really for me, I can handle it. It's what when I move on, who's going to do this? Like, who's going to routinely update the website and make sure it's updated with all the updated communication? And right now it's just falling on me, Karen, and Mallory largely. So the help is definitely there. And I'm just thinking long-term, not so much now, but like when I leave, if they ever choose to leave, like who would do it? And my fear is we'd go back to how it was before we've made all this progress with it.
I'm going to open it up to the committee first, and then I'll give it to the selectmen. So I'm going to open it up to any finance committee member that wants to make a point on that, and then I'll open it up to the selectmen. Anybody on the finance committee have anything they want to add to that? Board of Selectmen, Ken or Nancy?
Yes, if I could speak on that. Number one, I didn't realize Brett was going to move on, so I'm a little disappointed in that. Secondly, I supported the 4 hours. We had just, and she's a great worker. We had just hired her, I want to say in October, maybe November, and then there was all of a sudden there was a request that she go up to 30 hours. And I think we're moving kind of quick on this. So I'm going to stick with the recommendation that we supported before, that it be 4 hours increase. We're in a difficult situation because of the pandemic, financially and everything else. I'm going to stay with the 4 hours.
My feeling is it should stay where it is right now, and I'm basing that on the fact that, in my opinion, since the first day I was elected, the Board of Selectmen, the individuals, are expected to work. I have seen, since I came back in 2015, and we got a town administrator, I have seen more and more and more dumped on the town administrator and the administrative assistant, okay? It's about time everyone who is a selectman, and I'm not going to single anybody out, I know people try to do their best, but you've got to learn the job if you don't have the skills. Brett has skills in I'll call them technological areas, okay? And so I know he's been helping out, but simple things like, hey, Mallory, let's go for a grant about this. Well, you know, if you got the idea, it should be, Mallory, I want to go after this grant. Point me in the right direction. I'll see how much I can do and we'll work together. That's how the Board of Selectmen and Board of Health worked all those years when we were together. Everyone has to do more, all right? So that's why I'm saying, instead of continuing to add to our support staff, take a look at what you're doing, what you're contributing. The selectman is not a few hours a week, all right? It's 24/7. No, you're not working 24/7. But you hold that title and you are expected to be available. And therefore, I'm saying leave it where it is, and let's see what can be picked up. What assistance can the Board of Selectmen give to our administrative support people?
May I add, I don't know who is saddling the assistants with all the work. I mean, I pretty much do all my own stuff. I mean, I'm helping out with the business guide, with the grants, whatever. I mean, I'm constantly asking. So I don't know who's saddling them, but maybe we could, that's a conversation we could have at at one of our meetings.
Okay. So Mallory, I'm going to give you the opportunity to just go over what were the rationale for your next level, especially coming out of the conversations we had last week.
So again, this is not an easy ask because I understand the position that we're in, but when we went out and hired an additional person originally, I had told the selectman, I can find work for a full-time employee. We have a lot going on. The town of Dayton is in an awesome spot for grants. We are, what I say, do everything right. We're a community compact person. We're our community. We have all of our ducks in a row. Our plans are aligned. Like, we have our stuff together so that we can make a good case for grant funding. And we get them, and that's great, but they come with a lot of work, a lot of oversight, a lot of deadlines, monthly reports. It's a lot. It's been a lot. And so I would like this person to handle some of those things. I would also like her to, so she does great research for me, and so I asked her to play around on our website about posting agendas on the calendar itself. So you are a resident of town Dayton, you go to the website, you go to the calendar, oh, Finance Committee's meeting today, what are they meeting about? And click on the agenda and it's right there. I want that so badly, but I can't saddle the clerk's office with something extra. So if Leanne took that on as part of a whole like website administration rollout, that would be a centralized person taking agendas, and be like, they could email it to her and she can post that. And that's more transparency for us. It's a great win, and it helps cable because they can see everything in one little spot about what meetings they need to go to. I also spend a lot of time sending press releases out to, I mean, I wouldn't say a lot, but like a considerable amount of time sending press releases out, verifying what they say. So I got to give them the details, then verify. Then if I have another department, they have to look at it too. I would pass that off to this person. What's that? I heard something, sorry. So anyway, I have.
Mr. Chairman might have said something because this
No.
thing lit up. I'm not sure.
Okay, weird. Okay, sorry about that. There's other things like facilities management. Our building commissioner took on facilities management last year. We did not do a lot of like preventative maintenance or ongoing maintenance to our buildings. And so we're now trying to roll that out because it makes them last longer. So we are, you know, she could assist with that. Right now, Leanne's tracking the public buildings budget, and we monitor we moved last year, if you remember, all of our energy efficiency at our energy costs into that one building. So one budget. So we track energy expenses of each building. So she would be working on that, and maybe working with Jim, I imagine, to work with Jim on a spreadsheet of when our buildings needed whatever, you know, the fire extinguishers needed to be replaced. Oh, this is the last time that we had a deep clean, right? COVID-19 is going to make us have deep cleans. This is the last time the pest control person came in. Somebody to monitor that and track all of that. So she would assist in that way. She would assist in, you know, I was the one doing the finance committee schedule and postings in coordination with Chairman Schwartz. She could assist us with that. Stormwater committee is something that she could assist, because right now that's Roz is kind of juggling that. Reservations for town meeting spaces. The social media aspect is also huge, and Brett Zagrafis also sends a huge email out about this is what's going on in our town. And I know people rely on that. They asked me about it. When he kind of went on a hiatus because of a variety of things. It's a long labor. Like it's laborious. It takes a long time to put that together. Leanne could do that. She'd have most of the information anyway, because she'd have all those agendas to set out. So she would know who was meeting. She would know the events going on, because she would be working on the reservations. So it just makes sense. And I've long wondered if anything ever happened to Brett, who would then take that on? I've actually asked myself that question, like, oh boy, that would fall to Karen and I don't know if we could keep that up. I just don't. So, please fund this. I understand what we're up against, but as we move through a post-pandemic world, I think more people are going to rely on electronic means and getting their news and their information at their fingertips on a website, and we're going to come to rely on communicating that way. This will set us up to do that.
Thanks, Mallory. This is my view. I would say that one of the reasons we went to a town administrator form of government was to allow the town administrator to review our departments, review what our necessary needs are for the town. And as you can tell, I think she's a little passionate about this one, that we need it. And if what she laid out is what helps us to take us to a next level. From a financial standpoint, I'm struggling with it to see where we end up at the end of the day. But I think the merits of what's being requested are pretty valid. And, you know, I think there are many tasks that are thrown in many different directions that we really do need to pull into a localized spot to be done. And so I would support the additional hours if at the end of the budget session, we are where we think we need to be from a budget standpoint. So I don't know what the rest of the committee feels on that, but I think if we realize that we can afford it at the end of this process, I think it's a worthy commitment to make.
Can I just add something else if the finance committee didn't have any comments or questions?
I have one comment.
Go ahead, Scott.
So Ed, I fully agree with you. If we have the financial means to do this, I think we should. One of the big things we did with bringing Mallory on, or bringing the role of the town administrator on, and then bringing the other assistants, is to professionalize our government here. You know, our selectmen are great at what they do, but they are elected volunteers. They are not trained. They've got a lot of experience under the belt doing this for a long time and getting the exposure to it. But we brought Mallory in, we brought her help in to help drive professionalizing and standardizing and making our government more efficient. If Mallory's coming forward and doing the evaluation and saying this is what it's going to take our town to the next level, then by all means, that's the route we should be going and pursuing. I agree, though, we have to make sure it's within the financial means of the town and that we can do this properly. But from a justification purposes, I think this should fully fall within our professional division of our town government, which is under Mallory. I fully agree with that.
Is it possible, the $8,000 difference, is it possible that down in the expense column, we could save at least a portion of the $8,000? I'm looking at the communications. We haven't spent anything in the last 3 years, but now we're going from 1,600 to 3,900. You know, replacement of equipment, if we have an idea there on what we're going to need, maybe professional and technical. If we can make up a good chunk of the $8,000 right there.
Can I add something to that, Peter, that's
Sure.
related to that? So we actually have, and I know maybe this doesn't matter to the finance committee, but it was a big deal when we signed the contract, is that we have a 5-year contract with our website vendor. In the first 3 years, we paid something like $4,500 a year, which is pretty standard for us to use their platform. We actually have a 50% reduction in years 4 and 5, which I believe we're in. Is that correct, Town Administrator Aaronstein? So we're actually saving about $22,000 to $2,500 over the next 2 years, so $5,000 total, just by using the website vendor that we're using right now. So that's a savings just by, you know, and it's kind of related to website administration, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So it's not on here, but we did, I don't know where the website budget line is, Madam Administrator, but we are saving a significant amount of money in these next 2 years.
We also cut the, I'm sorry, Kevin, please. We also
Hairdresser.
We also cut, I need one. We also cut the professional technical by 10,000. So,
I think, Peter, to your point, I think we got to look down at some of the things we talked about on the Board of Health budget is where we were going to get some of that additional funding.
Right.
That when we talked about reducing that communications piece and those types of things, I think we talked about that would be done via some of our website stuff. And so I think it's part of the whole package. I think we put it in our recommendation, but we put an asterisk that it is something we'll revisit when we get the finalized budget put together after we go through everything, that if we have to stop making reductions, that is a potential spot that we'll go back to if we have to make those reductions. So I would recommend that we follow the TA's recommendation in the FinCom's recommendation, but put that asterisk next to it that it is subject to change when we do the final review of the budget.
Second.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
I mean, I just wanted to say 7 out of 8 times when it comes to a budget or a certain department, the town administrator usually recommends less than what the Board of Selectmen does. So I think it means a lot for this one thing. The other thing I want to mention is, and I just want to do a big picture analysis right now. We, meaning Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, have always been supportive of departments when they have told us, we don't have what we need more help. And our department, now I'm just talking about the executive department, the Board of Selectmen, has been the last board to really make those investments in our department to be able to professionalize and modernize our operation and have better communication. So I just want everyone to keep that in the back of their mind as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Zagrosses. Anyone else have anything that on, what is that budget number?
122.
So on budget 122, that the Finance Committee recommend follow the TA's recommendations for budget 122. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion? I would just, that we add to the motion that we've placed an asterisk next to discussion for further discussion if necessary. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? You guys have it. So you got that, CJ?
He does.
I'll take that as a yes. I see. And then, so all of the additional hours were in budget 122, Mallory?
Correct.
Was a motion to follow the Board of Selectmen recommendation on, there's the question. Are we going to keep interns in the budget or take them out? I think at this point, Peter, you were talking about where do we find funding? If we're going to add additional hours, I don't think we're going to have an intern program this year as it looks right now, but it's something we can revisit in the fall. If we think that by next summer, we'll be able to do some intern programs, but I think at this point, it's a mute thing through the first 6 months of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a good chunk of it. And right, we don't even know what if the school is going to offer any internships in the fall at all, or spring for that matter.
Yeah, so I would make a recommendation that we follow the town administrator's recommendation on budget number 124.
But on that, so on the interim program, I don't agree with that at all, zero funding that account. I would recommend actually leaving some type of balance, because a lot of the schools, even though there's no summer internship programs, a lot of these students, especially the professional students, the business students, are required to have an internship for credit. So they're going to be looking to do it either during an off cycle or during next summer. So by funding this down to zero, we're going to lose the access and the ability to actually bring on a qualified candidate that actually needs credit for school. So I'd recommend funding this at some level, even though we can reconsider it in the fall, even if we just leave it as a placeholder, a stipend type situation, $1,000 or something.
Yeah. So Mallory, from when we've done the interns in the past, they were done in the summer. So they were spent in June, July, and July and August primarily, correct?
So no, actually, we had one in the summer, and then we had a Mass Maritime student. So they have trimesters. So he was all throughout the year. He ended up coming back. He's actually, thank you to Zach Freitas, he actually got the ball rolling on Code Red. And now this week we unrolled that rolled that out. So he is all the time. We had a student for the winter break once come back for municipal accounting. And that's a nice time because it's the half time of the budget. So we're kind of cyclical depending upon what they study. I will just say that $5,000 is for about 3 interns. They're paid minimum wage. And if you cut it in half, I could do something with that. We could do at least 1 intern.
Okay.
Or do minimal hours, but they still get the experience.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, Chris.
Something that we used to do in the town of Bellingham in the budget for making sure that you had a placeholder. I don't know if it's a requirement under budgetary law or by town charter, but anyway, you could always put $1 in that budget so that you don't have to reconsider it at a fall town meeting. At that point, you'd be able to fund it. If Mallory decided and it was the board's pleasure to bring an intern in, say for next springtime, because there's $1 placeholder there, you can transfer money from other budgets to continue funding that operation without having to go back to town meeting.
So Scott, what number would you feel comfortable with?
I like the 2,500 Mallory recommended, because it's not only the fact of having the program and having that line item from a budget perspective, there's also a lot of goodwill. When someone looks at a town and says, wow, they're investing in our future, they have an internship program. If we fund it at $1, if even fund it at a smaller amount than that, it's a token kind of thing. It's like, yeah, all right, whatever. So I think a $2,500, I mean, we're still picking up some over last year, and it still shows that we're investing in it, even though we're in a hardship tip program. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
No, I'm all right with that.
That's fine.
Pete, you good? All right. So I would amend my recommendation that we recommend that line item be recommended at 2,500, and that beyond that we follow the rest of the recommendations as listed by the Board of Selectmen and the TA in budget 124. Is that the number?
Yeah, 124.
124.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. What's the next hold one?
Assessors.
141 was the next hold.
So on the Board of Assessors, I think to follow what we had, I had previously stated, I'd like to see the stipends remain at the FY20 budget level for the members of the Board of Assessors.
So I have a question on this one as always, because is in the chairman's salary, is there also a stipend?
Chris, is it broken out in the chairman's salary?
It's not, yeah. So when I've been preparing payroll, yes, there is her regular salary, and then there's her weekly stipend, roughly $114.
So does the
So
2%?
it should be part of her salary figure and not within the salary members line item. Should be.
Miss Ed, are you asking that because the Board of Selectmen went back and revoted to not do the 2% increase?
I just think all of our stipends should remain at 2020 levels based on what we're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So where I was trying to go with that, if line item 5101 includes the stipend at the salary, then the 2% increase is being applied as well to the stipend, and we need to back that out.
Yeah, so I think it's, so can you just, Mallory, can you just go there, just so I can see the FY20 approved is 9711, and what is the FY21 request?
1002.
So which is a $291 increase.
Right.
So it's 291 and change divided by 2. So it's 145.50. Is that what it is?
145.50.
Yeah. So line item 5101 should also be reduced by 145.50. Right, Scott? Because that's what the increase of the other two members is.
Oh, okay.
If the stipend's the same for that, I don't know what the chairman, because it's not broken out.
I think all three members are paid the same, correct? I don't know.
If it pleases the chairman and the rest of the finance committee, I can get you that information after tonight's meeting when I can log in.
All right, so let's for budgeting purposes tonight, we'll use the 145.50. If it's something different than that, the town accountant will get back to us with that. How's that? So we can at least plug a number into it, so we can at least see where we're at.
I'm fine. That
Okay.
makes perfect sense. We just absolutely should note this is we're absolutely recommending the 2% increase on the salary. We're just not recommending an increase on the stipend.
Correct. All right, so but for a recommendation purpose, let's just follow the 145.50 so we can actually put a number in there, Scott, and then at a future we can make that adjustment to it. So I would take a motion to recommend the Board of Assessors budget as outlined in the Board of Selectmen's recommendation and the adjusted number of 85,458.81 for the chairman's salary.
So moved.
Is there a second? On discussion, hearing none, all's in favor? All those opposed, the ayes have it.
That was a good catch, gentlemen.
Thank you. That's what we're here for.
I
We're
don't
gonna
have
start.
a hold on 145. Is that right? I don't have a hold on this.
No, I didn't have a hold on that.
So CJ, you can fill in 145 is good.
Elections.
So elections was on the
Oh, I actually, if I may, I
Say that again,
skipped that
CJ?
town treasurer line.
Yeah, that one's okay.
The TA has double.
Yeah,
Is that a typo?
it It's not a typo. It's my quest to make this a
Oh,
combined
okay.
position.
All right.
But thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's at a later date. So on elections, I think is a solid point that we should be looking at the early voting, the mail-in voting that's going to be taking place. And instead of always being behind the eight ball with transfers, because I think we've done transfers every year on elections for the last 4 years, I think early voting is going to be expanded. So we can either under budget it and put more money in it in the fall, or we can put an extra 2,000 and see if that's enough.
Has the number already gone up due to the number of elections this year? Yes, it has.
Yeah, she had asked you for a transfer, a finance committee reserve fund transfer.
What are the wishes of the committee on this one? I can go either way. We can put more money in the fall if we see that that it's starting to get drained, or we can put an extra 2 and see if that's enough.
Never have elections again.
I think there's too much uncertainty right now to actually be increasing anything at this time. I mean, we don't know what they're going to end up doing with the elections, how they're going to recommend it, what's going to happen over the next 6 months, just with the pandemic alone, plus the number of elections, the current uncertainty in administration from a federal basis and everything else. So,
all right. So I would recommend we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendations on budget 162.
motion.
Is there a second? On discussion, hearing none, all is in favor? All is opposed, the ayes have it. Was there a hold on 163? I think we just did that as combined, right? So that's fine too now.
I think we're at 175, right?
Yep. So 175 is, I would recommend that we go back to the stipend levels of FY 20. And I think is Tim the chairman of the planning board?
Yes.
No?
I believe
All
so.
right. So I think he agreed with us when we talked about that last week. So
Yep, he did.
if we can go back to the FY 20 level, which was 20, yeah. Where's FY 20 budget?
Yeah, TA and Board of Selectmen have that.
Okay, perfect. So were there any other questions on the planning board besides the stipend thing?
I had a question on the professional and technical, but it looks like I don't remember from my notes why, but I have 15 down as professional also, which agrees to Mallory's recommendation.
Peter, can I ask you a question about that?
Sure can. Hopefully I have an answer.
I'm sure you do. Is that because it looks like they're gonna, just if they kept the current spending from that line item, that line right now, they'd probably get to about half of what they're requesting. Is that why?
I think that's probably what my reasoning was, and I wish I had written it down.
No worries. It makes sense. Sound logic. Good work.
So I would propose that we follow the TA's recommendation and fund 5,300 at 15,000, making total budget 18,230.54.
Yep, so moved.
This
Sure.
is also the line item where, based on the special article, there's an inflation in the office supplies expense, correct?
Oh, for the plan copier.
Correct.
Yeah, down in 5420, right?
So that was not updated here. So we would have to increase that.
I thought he added more into the special.
They put it in the special article, and we told them starting next year it needs to go into the budget. I thought we should reduce the special article.
By the
There was
maintenance.
there was a lot of jibber jabber on that.
Yeah.
Why not? So Mallory, I don't know what your thoughts or the Board of Selectmen's thoughts are, but I think because they were requesting 10.5
Yeah.
in the special article for the
Right.
plan copier.
And so
But I'm not sure what he said the service part of that plan was.
in my experience, I purchased one of these before a previous community, and in my experience, the plan starts whenever you purchase the item. So it makes sense to me to go part and parcel for the first year and then continue the service in the operating budget. Because what if they don't, with all of this, especially, what if that got deferred to the fall and then they would start mid-year with the contract? So to me, it makes sense. But if you are planning on going forward with it at annual and purchasing that, then I would add $1,000 to this line and then reduce 1,000 from the special article.
I'm going to ask
Or reduce 2,000, sorry.
another question here. And for this particular purchase, since they're so underspent on the professional technical, is there a way for them to actually do a budget transfer to the office supplies, do the purchase in FY 2020, and then not put it on as a special article at all?
They
Or is
could
that
if we lifted the spending freeze.
What is
If
the
we
Board of
got to a
Selectmen's
point-
thought on that about allowing them to make the purchase rather than going to a special article, knowing full well that we need it and they have money in their budget line item for professional technical currently that could fund that in this year's budget?
But it's equipment, isn't it?
They would have to do a budget transfer to office supplies, yeah.
Yeah, they could do a transfer and make the purchase out of their expense line.
But
prior
office
to-
supplies aren't equipment. They don't have an equipment line.
It would just, I think we would just charge it to that bucket. I think that would just be an accounting change to make sure it came.
I will ask the town accountant, can that be done?
It can be done, but I think you're going to operate contrary to what you've done as far as these irregular, so the purchase of the copy machine is probably something that's going to happen once every 10 years. So it's not a recurring cost that should be borne by the operating budget. The maintenance part of the contract probably should attach to the original purchase initially. I don't know that I'd separate the maintenance cost in the first year, again, because you don't know if town meeting would support the purchase of the photocopy, this specialized photocopy machine.
Chris, that's exactly what I said when we discussed this before, and Mr. Rhines agreed that it should be the special article, because if the budget is going to get approved before we vote on the special article, so if the budget passes with money in it, and the article for the equipment doesn't pass, you got money in the budget that you don't really need.
No, but that's not the question right now. The question right now was, could they make the purchase out of this year's budget for the entire plan copier, utilizing a transfer with it from their professional technical to an office supplies line to purchase it because they have $15,000 currently left in that line? That's the question. The question's not, what do we do about the $1,000? That was a whole separate question. The question right now is, could they, if the Board of Selectmen lifted the spending freeze for that, make a purchase from their current expenses via transfer to purchase the 10.5 and not have a special article at the annual town meeting?
Chris, I got a question for you. For
Sure.
the budget that we're in right now,
Nancy,
FY20, can we put an
Nancy,
equipment line in this budget?
Nancy, I was asking the town accountant a question.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get
Could you let him answer
clarification from the town
Let
accountant.
him answer my question first, please. Go ahead, Chris, could you answer that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you can do this. The expense doesn't quite fit the definition of office supplies. And quite frankly, there was no there was no forethought in the fiscal 20 budget to plan for a purchase
Okay,
of a piece of
that's
equipment
fine.
like this.
That's fine. Go ahead. Sorry, Nancy. Go ahead.
So Chris, you and I are on the same page because my question to you was going to be, in the FY20 budget, can you now create an equipment line in the planning board budget and then transfer money to it? As you just stated, it's not in the budget. So is there any other equipment line in this current budget that a copy for the planning board can be purchased from, even if we have to transfer money from the planning board budget into that equipment line?
It can be, but I'm going to tell you that town meeting would, this isn't going to be like a year-end transfer type transfer. I would recommend to the finance committee and the board of selectmen that it consider making that a special article on town meeting floor.
Well, right now,
Transfer
that's
that.
how it is. So I was just looking for alternatives. I agree with what you're saying. I was just grasping for straws, but you and I
No,
are on the same page.
And so are we, Nancy, and so are we. We're trying to figure out a way to get this out of the 2021 fiscal year budget and defer it into 2020. If there's leftover money in this line item, and this is what and the planning board is looking to do a purchase, that was the whole point of the conversation. Just figuring out a way to defer the expense out of 2021, which is what we're going to be in a fiscal mess for. So
Right, and that's why I was looking for any equipment line anywhere in the FY20
It doesn't
budget.
have to, sorry, just for clarification, it doesn't have to be charged to an equipment line. The only thing that matters, the only thing the town meeting is voting on is the subtotal for personnel expenses and for non-personnel expenses. So the individual line items are specific, are purposely for accounting control purposes. So town meeting only cares that we don't overspend the expense bottom line in the planning board or the salary without making a transfer. So then I'm going to tell you, yes, you can absolutely fund the purchase of this piece of equipment from the existing budget, assuming that they no longer have a need for that $14,000.
And I would argue, as someone who grew up in an office supply business, a copy machine is an office supply, but that's a whole separate story.
We're talking about semantics, but again, the accounting that you see there, the specific line items that you see there, it's all for accounting control.
All right.
Purposes. It's not for authorization purpose by town meeting.
Yeah. We'll leave it as is, and then we'll see what happens with the entire budget, and then we'll get back to it if we find out we don't have enough to fund all of our special articles. So, is there a motion to recommend following the TA's recommendations on budget 175?
I don't want to harp on this, but if we defer this into the 2020 budget, we're going to need to fund the maintenance expense for 2021 for the copier. So no, we have to hold that line item until we make that decision.
Okay.
That be paid with that 10,000?
It would be. That's what their cost estimate includes, is their contract. So it's all together.
So Scott, it would be year one. It would be year one is included in the special article. So if it doesn't get funded or doesn't get recommended as part of the special town meeting, they still need $1,000 for their office supplies.
Right. No, I understand. But if we do a transfer and purchase it in 2020, we're going to need to fund the maintenance expense in 2021.
No, it would be included in the purchase.
Yeah, it's included in the 10.5 they're requesting in the special article.
No, I think, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Scott, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the idea, what Scott's saying is that 10.5 includes the maintenance cost
Right.
that would be borne by fiscal 20, or that would be due in fiscal 21. You don't want to transfer money to buy the machine plus 1 year, or effectively the first year, which isn't due until year 2, technically now, if you buy it now. I mean, unless the maintenance effect goes into effect immediately upon purchase.
I think that's part of it. I think it goes into effect immediately for the entire year.
Okay.
I think
Right. So we would bear the maintenance expense.
you're paying a maintenance fee on your first year piece of equipment.
You
That's
do.
how I understood it last week.
And I agree. And you would then have to pay the maintenance expense for year 2 at the end of fiscal year 2021.
I think what we could
No,
do.
you would fund it. It would be on July 1st. It would be funded in fiscal 22.
Right. So you purchase it at town meeting in FY20, but it's for 21 expenditures. So when you actually get it and everything gets started, your expenses don't start until it's FY21. That goes through the article. The following year, it's put in the 22 budget line. Everybody looks frozen.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I agree.
I'm just making the comment that if we spend the money in 2020, we're not going to have any budget for this in 2021. So
Right.
all of a
So
sudden
you
we're going to have a maintenance expense in 2022 that we didn't bear in 2021.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, if you choose to transfer the entire the entire first year cost, which is the piece of equipment plus the first year's maintenance, if they're going to bill us on a monthly basis for the maintenance, whatever's left in the office supply budget can be encumbered into fiscal 21, so that the remainder of the fiscal 21 contract can be paid from that money. Because technically the maintenance is actually due on purchase anyway. I doubt that you're going to have to pay that first year's maintenance all up. So if the maintenance is $1,000, you're not going to get a bill for the whole $1,000 in year one on the purchase. You're going to be billed monthly for it, unless we choose to do unless the planning board can arrange so that it's paying for all year one maintenance on date of purchase, which I would assume would be sometime in June.
Okay.
When you buy a piece of equipment like this, is there any kind of time period during which it's under warranty, so you might not have to pay for a whole year?
I'm sure there is.
Generally, yes. Yeah.
Well, but so Nance, that's the problem with not seeing what that contract says in front of us to know what truly is what Scott talks about with the maintenance piece of it versus the purchase of the equipment and what it all really means. You know, we're flying blind of, we were told it's a copier for 10.5. What does that really encounter? So I think that's a discussion for the special articles and getting better backup to so we have the better knowledge to make that determination.
Well, actually, if tonight you decide whether it's going to be in this budget or whether it's going to be a special article, if you budget for the higher amount, we can always reduce on town meeting floor.
Yeah, but I think we're only talking about is the maintenance fee. We're not talking about the purchase part. The purchase part would be part of the FY20 budget if that's chosen to do that way. So I'm looking for guidance on what we want to put in for a recommendation, so at least we can have a number to work off of. And then we can put the asterisk like we did on the other one and revisit it at the end after we've gotten through everything else. So can I get a motion to recommend the TA's recommendations on 175 with an asterisk that says we will review the office supply line based on what we do with the special articles on the plan copier?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. All right, so you got that, CJ? Yep, I'll take that as a yes.
Yep.
Okay, so if we can continue down, Mallory.
Board of Appeals.
I think we held this specifically, the discussion was on, there were two things, making sure the stipends were at the right level. And then on the professional and technical line were the two discussion points, if I remember from, and the additional overtime. Which I think they put in due to Strawberry Fields.
They wanted a, right here, this line, the professional technical.
No, I was looking at
Additional hours.
31, where they had 2,000 in. Mallory, your request, you recommend 1,000 and the Board of Selectmen recommends 2,000?
Yep, I hate overtime. I don't think it's right to go to town meeting, tell people how many hours you're gonna work and then routinely work more. I get it, sometimes it's needed, so I like to minimally fund those. You'll see some budgets will just automatically give those a 2% increase. I'll always go down in and take that away. So that's just me. I don't like overtime.
But this isn't overtime. Isn't this additional hours at the regular rate of pay?
Well, for him, it would be until he reached 35, and then by contract, he gets an hour and a half, like it's
Time and a half.
time and a half after the 35.
Okay.
What does he work now? Doesn't he work 20 hours now?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can't imagine it going up to being overtime.
Something has to be like ridiculous. There has to be some sort of crazy thing happening there. He's very quick. He's very efficient. I don't see it either.
I would recommend that we follow the TA's recommendation on budget 176, and if they need additional funds, they can come back and ask for them later on. We're only following what they had previously done and what their expenditures were.
So move.
Is there a second on discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it.
Yeah, they're minimal expenses.
Yeah.
Here we go. Agricultural Commission.
Agricultural Commission. Can someone explain that one to us?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to specifically talk about 5870?
Just the overall, it's a new budget, so
Yep.
if you
Yeah,
can
I
do
can-
it, if you can do the Cliff Notes version.
So just side note, I am just a non-voting member. So 5340 communications is mostly because we want to do a public outreach as part of our establishment as an agricultural commission. We want to go into schools. We want to do an educational program. So a lot of that is money that we anticipate to have either a newsletter or some sort of mailer. 5870, I don't know who wrote replacement equipment. It's not actually replacement equipment. It's more of a one-time expense. In order to get the community garden going next door at 949 Somerset Ave, we needed certain supplies. I spoke to Jonathan Gray, actually, who's a sustainable farmer, and he informed me of all the different things that we might need just to get the garden going. So our intent as a commission, or the intent of the commission, I should say, was 5870 is more of a like a one-time thing. We don't have anything to get the community garden going. So we're working with the Dighton Lions Club to give the produce that is created or made from the garden to the Lions Club so that they can distribute that to our Dighton and Berkeley residents through the food pantry. So that was the original intent. Again, 5870 is to get us things like a huge water jug, because we're gonna, you need water to grow the garden, and just things I didn't anticipate. I am not Ken Arujo. I'm not, an expert farmer, but I do know what I don't know. So I knew to reach out to them. And so these are more like one-time expenses. 5870 should not be $1,130 every year. It should be significantly less than that. But we just don't have anything to get it going right now. So that's why it's there.
Okay. Any questions on 179? There's a motion to recommend 179 as listed by the TA and the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it.
So Mallory, before we go further, do you need the Zoom line?
What's that? What's that, Scott?
Do you have a conflicting meeting at 8 with the Zoom?
Yep, I'm actually just canceling that and keep going, please.
I lost the bet, Scott.
Brett was wondering why I was all engaged today.
Scott, yeah. Scott, you and I are good. Our wives are both at meetings or work, so.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, I think the rest of the way down, Mallory, if you want to keep going down on this, I think we might have a
I'm
general.
sorry.
I don't see anything else.
I don't think there's any, nope, that's it.
All right, so
That's
can
it
you
for
stop?
Jennifer.
So I would accept a motion that the Finance Committee recommends a total number for general government of $1,617,901.85. Is there a motion on that?
You have to amend that with our reconsiderations if required.
Yeah, we will. We'll have to vote on, unless, you know what, that's a good point, Scott. We'll wait and do those total votes. after we get to the bottom. We'll come back up and do those individual votes of those if we have to make any further changes. Okay. All right, so can you go do me a favor and go back to the left on FY20 budget?
So that's column H.
This is just I could have actually done it myself. I actually have the I have the budget up on my other screen, but
Oh, sorry.
so can you go over to the right further what the so the chief's request was a 3% increase?
Yes. The police union, they're in their final year of their contract, and they had negotiated a 3% for this year, and I believe he was mimicking what that was.
So, based on, so if we eliminated those two stipends that the police chief is getting down below, or if you added the two stipends into here, the number would be 115,648.70. Based on a 2% increase based off of last year's salary, the number would be, of course, my phone just, hold on, I just lost my calculator here. Can you slide back over, Mallory?
Yes.
I'm losing it. Many people have said it's gone on for years, but it's just catching up with me.
It's about $100 off, Ed.
Yeah, it's 115,783. So, it's about $125. And I just think for keeping things clean and not starting to add stipends that are gonna change every time, and everybody's gonna ask for an increased stipend every year, an increase of stipend the next year, that we keep it clean. And that the finance committee will recommend on the 5105 that the salary be listed at 115,783.83. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but that's my personal view.
Yeah, remove the other two stipends.
And
That's
remove those other two stipends.
So this line will have to change as well. Right here, 5157. This figure is derived from the base pay, just so you know, so you're aware
All right,
of
so
that.
what's the difference in that line? Can you just slide over?
Yeah, it's a 10%. It's got to be 10% of base pay, so I can just calculate that very quickly.
So it's
Everybody
it's 11,578 versus 11,464, right?
just do the even thousand, and that'll make the full amount go down below too, the full 2%.
Ah, that's a good point. So let's, so.
115,648.70.
Yep. Yep, I'm good with that. Which will change that to 11,648. Anyone else have anything on that?
Oh my gosh.
You'll get there, Mallory. I know it.
Sorry. 115,6.
64.87.
Oof. There we go.
Anyone else have any points on that? Anything? So I would.
The only question that I have is similar to the notes on the side, what to do about the vacation sick buyback. Where we carried 89,000 last year, and are we carrying it again this year?
Yep.
Yeah, it went in FY20.
And how much was spent in each of the last 2 years on that?
0. Oh, you know what? I got to ask the chief about this, how he derived this figure, because this must be so he's allowed to buy back some vacation through his contract. So that's what these figures would represent. I don't know what this is. That's a lot, 33.
Is that Sergeant Dutra? 18?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know. I never worked with him.
Yeah, that could have been, Peter. You could be right.
Yeah, we had a very detailed conversation about this last year, and this is where we got in the whole concept about somebody retiring and a larger buyback, and then I guess nobody did retire. That's why he justified that number last year. I don't know.
Mallory, do we expect any retirements this year in the police department?
No, I mean, no. I think it's an item townwide talking about retirements for doing stuff about attrition before layoffs, if it comes to that. There's nothing hard and fast, though. Nothing I could put a figure together about,
So I think in a year like this, I have no problem leaving some money in there based on historical data.
Mhm.
But at this point, I would recommend that we reduce that to 25,000 based on the anticipation of no retirement.
Yep.
And the historical of there has been a couple of weeks buybacks, but we'll leave a little bit extra in there. And if someone chooses to retire, how much time do we have to pay them out when they retire on buybacks?
Last paycheck.
No, unless that's how's it reading the contract? Because I know in certain contracts, I know when we had the retirements at the water district, it was spelled out and didn't need to be paid until I think it was 90 or 180 days within 180 days of their retirement. And I'm not sure how we spell it out here, but I'll give you, for example, I know people who retire from the state now under certain contracts, they do not get their first paycheck from the state retirement system for 3 months.
It's always been that way.
Yeah, so I don't know what the policy we've set
I
on
don't know if,
vacation and sick time buybacks, but I think it's something we have to look at so we understand what the timeframes are, because it's not something that we leave hundreds of thousands of dollars in an account for people's buybacks when they decide to retire. They have to give us 60 days notice anyway, right? With their intention to retire.
I think so. I've got the contract pulled up here. I always think it should be, a year in advance. You tell the person so that you can budget for it and you don't have these kinds of problems, but duly noted.
Yeah, I don't think we should reduce it to 0, but I think we should take a significant reduction to it that if there's no anticipated ones right now. So I would recommend that the finance committee leave 25,000 in line 5155.
So moved.
And that the rest of the budget follow the Board of Selectmen's.
Yep.
The overtime line item? Yeah, the overtime.
Yeah, there
line
is.
item.
Well, I'm going to say with the police department, we leave it knowing what has gone on, and we can have a further discussion based on Mallory's point that she just hates overtime. That's why she puts a reduction in it.
No, not in this one. I realize overtime is important in these departments. I just think not a lot of people are going to be going away. I don't think I think, I don't know, I don't, I think 250 is a safe number.
This also includes another full-time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. It is a fluctuating number, so what the wishes of the committee to leave it at the TA's recommendation number, or
What was the actual, what's the expense so far year to date?
Right here.
152?
50%.
Yeah, so he was looking to level fund it.
Yeah, so I would be okay with following the TA's recommendation to reduce it by 25,000.
Follow the TA's recommendation with the exception of 5155 at 25,000 and 5105 at 115,648.70 and 5157 at 11,564.87.
Is there a second?
Okay.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you do the expenses side?
Yeah, we did the.
Just personnel. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Going too far.
I think we were following for the. Were there any questions on the expenses side? So Mallory, your recommendation on gas, is that based on the new cheap prices we have on gas right now?
Actually, no, I had that in before and left it in. So when I go through the budget, I always look at gas lines, and I left it in. I found out though that we generally use like 50 gallons a day. So if that's a marker for anybody.
Would that be, and this may be more of a Brett question, with the fuel efficiency of new vehicles, would that decrease significantly if they got 2 new ones?
Honestly, Peter, I wouldn't want to, give you a definite. Yes, there should definitely, since the cost of electricity in general, maybe not right now. I don't know what the rates are right now, but it's usually cheaper than fuel. So I would suspect that there would be, as long as this department eventually has, fuel efficient vehicles, then there should be definitely a decrease. I don't want to, say if it's going to be significant or not, but there will be a savings.
So Mallory, do you know if they're going to add an additional officer and we gave them the 2 new vehicles, are they going to have an additional person out on the street in an additional vehicle, or is it still the same staffing level?
I think it's for 1 shift, but I don't know that. I think there's just 1 shift that they would go up a person. We've been running without this position filled. Nope, erase that. That's not true. That's not true. This is an additional. Tyler Hazel replaced a previous officer that was separated from the town. So this is an additional one. We had higher staffing levels in the early 2000s, like pre-2010. I think he's trying to restore that. I still feel comfortable with 25,000. Maybe it's a little low, but.
So I was going to recommend that we go somewhere in between what you have recommended and the Board of Selectmen have recommended.
Can I ask a general question?
Always.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is for whoever wants to answer it. And I don't want to come off as sounding rude or why, when we ask to add personnel to like the Board of Selectmen's office or the town's clerk's office, the finance committee will always ask, well, why do you need it? And so I just want to know why we as a town are not asking when the police department or the fire department, not singling you out, Chief McGee, but when our public safety departments ask for people, why aren't we asking those same questions? Like, is there an increase in crime? Now we need an extra officer. Are there stats? Like, is there data to support this request? Like, what's going on? And I just want us to be fair for every department, that's all.
I will tell you from my perspective, I only leave it in here right now, Brett, until we get through the entire budget. And that is a very valid point. I think Mallory kind of just made part of the point, was we're trying to get back up to the levels of where we were, because we do have more people, we do have more developments, we do have more stress on our system than we had when
And
we had more
specialty.
officers in 2010. But that is a valid point for the chief to have to discuss as we move forward and finalize our recommendations.
When we asked him during his budget portion, it was that there was one shift that he wanted to add a person to, if I remember right. I don't remember which shift it was, but
4 to midnight.
Yeah,
Quarter
yeah, I
midnight.
was just gonna say that, it's the second. I think he has other areas that he can reduce to, like, to kind of make up for bringing someone on, even though it always hits us in the health insurance lines, but,
I just want to be clear. I just think we should ask those questions, and we very may well have. I don't remember everything that happened at the last meeting, but you know, it's not to single anyone out. I just you know, those questions should be asked, I guess is my point. That's all. It may well be needed, and I will support it, but that's all.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
So what is the wishes of the committee? I would recommend on the fuel line that we recommend 30,000. I just think that's a very deep cut, considering, granted, we should have more fuel efficient vehicles every time we buy a new one. But I think that based on, can you just slide back over to what we've spent this year, Mallory? You know, based on what we've spent we spent 20, right?
We spent 15.
at 15.
Oh, sorry, I'm covered up by pictures in certain spots.
we gotta blame Cole, he interrupted me, sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's okay. What did we spend previous year? Knowing that we spent over each of the last 2 years, we spent 27 and 29. I think 30 is fair based on historical perspective.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think 30 is a good number.
Yep.
So follow the TA recommendation on the expenses, police expenses, except for 5481 at 30,000.
Yes. I'm good with that. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Communications. So that's another one. They were looking, were they looking to add another full-timer?
Yes, for the daytime, and they would have 2 dispatchers during the day.
Is some of this being driven by us being in the new building and needing more personnel in the new building?
I don't believe so, but I can't really answer that. I think we can all agree we could have, you know, we can find use for more police officers. We're a very small department. It was actually a concern of mine going into the pandemic, because if one, you know, we didn't have a lot of guys to backfill anybody who might need to be out for 14 days. So I agree on that. The dispatching thing, my recommendation removes that extra person.
So when it was presented to the Board of Selectmen, what was their rationale for agreeing to add an additional person to communications?
Is that a
My
question?
recollection is, yeah, my recollection is that they expressed to us a need for it, and we supported it.
I think that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
They discussed that I remember him saying that they removed money in the part-time line to kind of I mean, not as much as a full-time person, but they lessened the need for part-time payments by adding that person.
Shouldn't the overtime have come down as well?
It should.
Absolutely should.
On the overtime line, Mallory, is your reason this one you were okay
I
with?
know I didn't touch it. I think I was too busy doing the math on the part-time and the, and the, I think I wanted to not attack, but go back to the extra person. I mean, overtime is hard for these because one thing could happen. We were down, something to know about this year's expenditures. For most of the summer, we were down to just 3 full-time dispatchers. So when that happens, your overtime kind of gets inflated. I had a conversation with the police chief in the police budget line, asking him how low he could go in overtime. He was more comfortable with 275, but he knew I was doing the 250. So,
Can you elaborate on something for me, Madam Administrator?
yeah, of course, yeah.
Is there, and I know you're sort of the messenger. I know this is not your logic, but what is the rationale between adding another person, having more staff, but also increasing your overtime line? Is anyone else perplexed by that?
I'm very perplexed
it's like
by that.
subtraction by addition or addition by addition. I'm not.
I'm very perplexed by that.
Yeah.
Is there an explanation? Did you get one, Madam?
I don't have one. I don't have one.
So I'm going to I, as the chairman of the committee, are going to recommend that we do not add an additional person until we do not add the additional person. We leave the overtime line as what is requested, and that if we find that it's available in the fall and we have more rationale and discussion, that there is a potential. And I know we always talk about not adding people in the fall, but this one was requested for the annual. But if there's further discussion that needs to be necessary, I would much rather be adding an additional police officer and a foot on the street than I would a communications person in the building.
And if it were the case that this gets revisited, then the overtime line is going to have to come down significantly.
Agreed.
You know?
Yep. So I would recommend we follow the town administrator's recommendation for the communications department.
So moved.
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. And that would include the expenses.
Question?
Yes.
How much will the salary full-time operators decrease if we're taking one person out?
It goes down to 227, 168.56.
Is level funded from the
It's
previous.
54. It's 54 and some change. No. 82.
Yeah, it's about 54,000 net.
Okay.
You see it? Okay.
Yeah, I see it. It's just, it's the resolution on my screen with the orange background. So, yeah, I see it.
It's your glasses. Your glasses are a little foggy.
Oh, I'm not wearing a mask or they'll be all over.
Geez, I find this one interesting. The fire chief's the only one that's getting more in his budget than what he requested.
Because he found that ladder truck at $50,000.
Where is the, oh, it's, where is the difference? I'm trying to see where the difference is from what you requested to what.
Stipend EMD.
Yeah.
Line item 5119.
So does someone just want to explain that? Because that is something new. Is that something new?
So you're looking at, if you're looking at right there, Ed, that's my EMT stipend.
Yep.
That's actually, the EMD is actually in the 231, or there's the EMT and an EMD. EMD's up there, the 5119.
Yep.
That's my EMD for the Emergency Management Director. And then the EMT is my stipend that's in line with the collective bargaining agreement.
Oh, so it's all been moved to a different line? Is that correct?
This
So that
one went
comes out
to
of-
ambulance.
That went to the ambulance fund,
Okay.
231.
This
Okay.
is more, this here is more because the selectmen voted that during contract negotiations.
So I was trying to figure out, Ed, just why, like last year we funded it, my EMT, a portion of it to come out of the fire part of it, and we thought that it should come out of the ambulance, where it's more of an ambulance related type of thing,
Yep. Yep. Understood.
instead of being split.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't even figured out what we're gonna, out of this raise and appropriate, what will be funded out of the ambulance fund. I think the last couple of years we've done like 350 to 400. We haven't even had that discussion yet. Any questions? We have the chief here. Any questions on the following the recommendation? So Mallory, what is the difference? I mean, it's like $400, but what's the difference between yours and?
It's Rebecca. I kept her salary increase in. The proposed 2%, she's a union member, it just hasn't been settled yet.
Oh, so we can't fund that. Okay. So I would recommend that we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation for the fire department.
Motion.
Is there a second?
For both the personnel and,
Yeah, can you just slide down quick, Mallory? It's not.
you know, I had a note that we might be able to save some money in supplies here, Chief.
In which one? I'm sorry.
In some of the supplies.
Like office supplies.
You know what? It might have been part of the replacement equipment.
All right, so I would recommend we follow the Board of Selectmen's on the salary segment and the town administrators on the expenses. Is there a second? Anybody?
Sorry, I was muted. Second.
On discussion here and then, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Did you get that, CJ? I like the nod of the head.
Doing too many things. I can't unmute.
Neither can I, CJ.
I take the thumbs up as a top-notch one, CJ. And then what was the 500? Oh, it was, so I would make a recommendation. We follow TA's recommendations on budget number 230. Oh, no. Board of Selectmen's recommendations on budget number 231 for salaries.
Do we have to hold out on it until we figure out what we're breaking out?
No, because that's just a funding method. That's just, that would be at a different line, Pete. We would recommend, just like we would transfer from free cash, we'd be transferring from the ambulance fund.
Okay.
We don't fund the whole ambulance budget out of the ambulance fund.
So moved.
Second.
On discussion here, none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. So, Mallory, why the reduction in your recommendation on medical training?
It's just I don't go up the 2%. Oh wait, medical training?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably a typo.
Okay.
Sorry, Chris. I wouldn't have done that for anything that we talked about. So I apologize.
Yeah, I don't have any recollection of it needing to be a change there either.
And I'm following Mallory's recommendations because she rounds back up to the zeros from the 56s. I think that's the only difference.
Well, I went down, so you always go down.
Chief, are you okay with the $56 reduction in line 5420 and 5430? You think you can handle that?
I think I can handle that.
Okay. I would make a recommendation that we follow the town administrator's recommendations on expenses for ambulance fund, yeah, for the ambulance.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion? All those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Uh, 240, is that, yeah, 241? Mallory, can you just slide over to the left a little bit on that one? I just want to see.
This is the request line. And then current.
So the recommendation is at 2% on the salary line?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on 241? Motion to recommend 241 as listed by the Board of Selectmen.
Motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Let's start. We'll group some of these. Any questions? 242, 243, 244, 245.
245, we've got one. We've got a difference there.
So, yeah, we'll hold that one. 292. So 292, hold that because we have to remove line 5119.
Yeah.
294, hold 295. 299. All right, so I accept the motion that all other under public safety, with the exception of the ones we put holds, be follow the Board of Selectmen recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. So let's go to the hold ones. Some are easy, some are not. So Mallory, did you just think there'll be less inspections?
Nope, I just went with actual expenditures. We have historically been very busy. So just going on that, and I know it's not too much, but I think we can lower it. But he is requesting a level funded. This was, the 20,000 was level funded. And I believe has been for a few years.
Do we know where, so we spent the 9,300 through March, what the last 2 months have been?
I don't know for electrical, but I do know that he's still going with permit applications. He remarked how happy he was that members of the public were still doing that despite our close to the public. Chris Laviolette may be able to shine some light into that with updated figures.
I can update that after tonight's meeting. Absolutely.
So based on historical, and as we've said, we want to try and get tighter on some of these, that I would follow the TA's recommendation of 17,000.
Okay. So moved.
Is there a second? On discussion, hearing none, all in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. 292, I would recommend 23,125.88, eliminating the new line for chief stipend.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. That would include the 10,000 in expenses.
Could I get that repeated one more time?
So it
changing-
just follows the TA's recommendation.
Okay.
And then 295, I would recommend the TA's recommendation for 295 personnel and expenses.
Hey, one question on the expenses side of it. With the 5,000 that he wanted to spend, we talked to him about spending that out of that mooring fund.
This one here.
Can we pull that to
Is
zero?
that out of the additional equipment or is that out of repairs and maintenance?
I thought the additional equipment was the trailer.
We need the new trailer for the boat, he said.
The 5,000.
Yep.
So that's a one-time expense?
Yeah, he always puts one additional piece of equipment in that in each, seems to be in each budget. So Pete, I'd recommend we leave it in there, but directionally via the town administrator, that he be directed to, and that the town accountant know that if there's a shortfall from the mooring account, that he'd have the ability to tap into this. But I think the recommendation of this committee is that is the last that this 5,000 is the last resort if necessary.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question about line 5106?
Sure.
So we have one assistant harbor master here who's going to get $1,500 stipend. Why is the other assistant harbor master only going to get $500? I guess is my question. If they're both doing the same job, and maybe this is more for Madam Administrator. I apologize.
I thought it was, we had 500, the harbor master, in the previous budget, the harbor master gets 1,000 and the two assistants get 500 each.
Yeah, exactly.
So what she has in the notes here is $1,500 for Alex, who is a harbor master, 500 for the moorings officer, and then 500 additional harbor master.
That was the request of Mr. Marino. So those notes are basically his notes. I just provided those to you.
Yeah, I get my concern, Madam Administrator. I'm sorry, finish your thought. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Your thought is more important here. Go ahead.
No, it's not more important. I just wanted to add that I think this budget was submitted long before the vacancy for the additional harbor master was filled. And so,
I think we had, Mrs. Selectman Zagrassis, I think our intention is it is still as it was in our previous budget of 500 for each of the assistants and $1,000 for the harbor master. Based on our rationale that all stipends are remaining at the same level as FY 20.
So then I think to what he might be.
I must be looking at an old budget or something. Oh, because we voted, I'm sorry, I didn't write down, excuse me, what the Board of Selectmen and the TA had.
So Mallory, do they have 2 or 3 assistant harbor
They
masters?
have 3. They
Okay.
have 3. So that, based upon this discussion, I just changed to highlight, it should be 1,500, 500 for each.
Each, right? Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. I'm sorry. It just it confused me why one was getting more than the other. That's all.
Okay.
So just going back as far as since we started having a harbor master stipend, the assistants have always been 1,000 total. Has he not had 3 in the past? And
Correct.
now?
The third. He added the third late in the middle of the year in FY 19, and it wasn't ever budgeted.
So one of
And
the
then
harbor
ended up
masters
leaving.
wasn't getting any money?
I would have to go back and look at the records there. I feel like we might have sorted that out, but we never adjusted the budget when we appointed the third. And it
So the
happened
board,
like,
so the Board of Selectmen have appointed 3 assistant harbor masters?
yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So it's only fair that it be the 500 per.
Yep, that was all. I'm sorry. Thank you. Good work.
So, go ahead, Kev.
I know nobody's here tonight probably to represent this, but how many hours do we actually spend on the water a year for the harbor master and like?
Mr. Marino has definitely addressed that in years past. I don't want to speak for him, Kevin, honestly. I really don't recall. I know he has told us it varies depending on what's going on that particular summer or when the weather's nice. So
Yeah.
I don't really want to speculate for him. He's definitely answered that before, though, at least to the Board of Selectmen.
Would a real number be between 70 and 100 hours for the whole season?
I would default to Madam Administrator on that. I apologize.
It's
I don't have a boat, so like Selectman Taylor would be able to answer that question because he has a boat and probably would be former
Well-
Selectman Taylor. I really don't. I have no frame of reference. Mallory, Madam
I've
Administrator.
once seen records of like the call logs, and I don't know if they actually log in every single, like if they actually check in, hey, I'm on the water. I know that that's been a mistake, but if I can be frank, it didn't seem like it was a lot. Now, I'm also not a boater. I don't have that background personally. It
Okay.
just seemed like it was not that much.
Let me tell you why I asked the question. If I take 1,050 for the gasoline, assuming that's not even all gasoline, and you divide that by the average price per gallon, and then you divide it by how much a boat average burns, maybe 3 to 5 gallons an hour,
Yeah.
to about 70 hours a year. So I'm just trying to establish
Okay.
what time is actually spent on the water.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm
That's a good
calculating a very low gallons per hour, burned on the boat, but I don't know what the calculation is. But it's just that number at one point, somebody should back into that and say 1,050 price per gas. How many hours could you possibly spend on the water with that amount of gas? That's just a question.
And I think that goes to the point of what Selectman Goulart said earlier about having this truly reporting under somebody who will have a leadership role in really giving us the opportunity to monitor it for a whole season and figure out next year as we go back into this what truly is.
Well,
is
that's my point. With the amount of people you're starting to establish on that one not board, but department, it's like, how many hours are you splitting over 2 or 3 people? You know, we're not talking about a lot of hours here. And I know there's a lot of hours spent maintaining and other things. I'm not trying to be unfair, but I'm just saying from a gasoline perspective, it doesn't seem like we're spending a lot of time on the water.
Yeah. And and let's be realistic. The people who are doing this are people who have passion for the water, and also they also have their own boats that they're taking out there. They're not always utilizing our harbor master boat. They just have a passion for the water.
I'm sure there's a logical explanation for it. It was just a question.
One of the harbor masters actually does the mooring permits and is more administrative. I do know that.
Okay.
So he doesn't go out on the boat.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. It was just a quick question.
It's a good point, though.
Ed?
Yes.
And my other thought is, in addition to what I said about reassigning the ACO and the harbor master, the harbor master formulates his own budget too. So that would be, I mean, he's not with us tonight, but he would be able to give you the details that we are looking for because he puts his own budget together. So that would be helpful if in fact he ends up reporting directly to the town administrator.
That's fine.
Thanks, Nance.
You're welcome.
So is there on what budget number is that? Mallory, I can't see the number. 295 to follow the town administrator's recommendations. Pete, I just need to understand what you'd like to see in 5850. Do you want to take that out, or do you want to leave it directionally?
It's fine if you want to leave it directionally, and there should be, I think he'd said there was 9,600 or something like that in that account. You spend it there first.
Okay. So I'd say we leave it, and we follow the town administrator's recommendation on budget 295, salary and expenses.
So moved.
Is there a
So
second?
is it 11.3?
11.
11.8.
11.8, because that was the additional 500, Nancy, for the third harbor master.
It's this that's different, Nancy. This,
But you took out 500. Yeah, that blue box, you took that out. Doesn't it make it 11.3?
no, because I didn't have that in mind. I didn't make a comment
Oh.
on
Okay, so it's 11.8. Okay.
11.
Can I ask a procedural question for either Mr. Ed or Madam Administrator, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Ed?
Mr. Ed.
I've been called a lot worse, Brett. Don't worry about it.
I combined both. I apologize. I'm getting older. So what happens, this is, or Selectman Goulart, you could probably answer this too. If, I answered my own question. We have not settled that contract. We've only settled the stipend. We can always go back, correct? And re-vote on stipends and compensation, right?
Yes.
Just in general?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Ed, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
By any chance, were you jogging past the post office at 3 o'clock this afternoon? The North
I was.
Dayton?
I was.
Well, I just want you to know, Mr. Copeland and I were standing there talking, and we were trying to get your attention. Then we both decided it wasn't you.
No, it was me. I will tell people I was as frustrated as I can be. I told Scott this earlier. I ran the fastest 8 miles I've ever run in my life. So, all right. So we've gotten through public safety, moving right along. Hopefully you can pick up the pace. I would recommend on the DR Regional School District Assessment. Do we have the breakout between operation and capital for requested?
Did we do
here it is.
299?
Right there. There it is.
Did we do 299?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it wasn't a held budget.
Okay.
See right
Okay.
here. Can you
Yeah,
see my?
I see it. I
Okay.
see it. Let's see. My calculator's not working right. And we can relook at this one based on where we are at the end. I would recommend an FY21 operating for the DR Regional School District Assessment of $10,401,081 and a capital of $403,919 for a total of $10,805,000.
And that represents what percentage increase over the approved?
Over the approved or over the actual for last year?
Approved.
It's the same operating, right, Ed, or is that?
No, it's a different operating. It's lower than what they've requested. I'm just trying to find last year's split, Scott, to give you that. So Mallory, can I see last year's split from that 10.5? From the 10.755, what of that was?
No, I know. I can only find FY19 on this spreadsheet. FY20 estimate. Yeah, I don't have it here.
So the 19 capital was 401,795. And the assessment was 10,541,757. Oh, and then there was 10, 353, 473.
353,
353.
473. So Scott, I will tell you what that number is now. It is a
$10,000 increase, so it's like 0.8.
0.8 over what we approved last year, but it is our actual was 10,560, right?
Yes, right?
Roughly 10,560.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Specifically since our capital is roughly the same. It's a 2.32% over our actual from this year. Is that your question, Scott? It's 0.4, whatever, 10.0755 to 10 or whatever that difference is, and then it's a 2.3 versus last year.
Ed, was your recommendation a different operating but the same capital?
Correct. So it's 10805 less the 403,919.
Correct. Thank you.
The warrant article will read the department recommendation, the department request, though, correct?
It's the request.
Unless they choose to match what our recommended number is, which they've done in the past. That's what our meetings used to happen many times, is we'd come to an agreement. I don't think they've actually submitted, because we haven't closed the warrant yet. So a change could be made. If they don't agree to the number, well, yeah, technically, Scott, you are correct. And then if we voted what the FinCom's recommended number is, it would go back to them, and they would either have to agree and make the changes, or they would send back the number again.
Right. I'm just making sure we don't follow the same process as our sister community here and put our recommendation, not the department's, which I believe is not legal, but okay.
Yep. So does anybody, I mean, that's just my recommendation as we go through this process. Does anyone have any other comments? I mean, if we need to, if the committees feel as we go with what the school department has requested, or we go with what we approved last year and level fund it, I throw that out. I just think to give a little bit more than we approved last year gets us closer to where they are, and it's a collaborative effort to get there.
And what does our total educational budget look like this year compared to FY projected 21? Total education, all schools.
All schools?
Yeah.
It's 11,842 versus a prior year of
466.
11,466. But that prior year has an additional 250,000 that we didn't actually spend.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, about 200,000 that we didn't actually spend. So it's really an 11,2 versus 11,8 or 11,6. So is there a motion to recommend DR Regional School Assessment at 10,805, Bristol County, which I think we could take the Bristol Aggie number down. I think there is I think we figured out it was like 34,000 last week. He gave us, it was 2124 times 11 students.
I
think
wrote
if
it.
we cut it to 35, we're still got a couple extra students in there.
And then I recommend that we put 35,000 in 5691, the Bristol County Agricultural Operating Assessment, and 821,280 on the Bristol Plymouth Assessment, for a total of 11,661,280.
What was the Aggie number again, please?
35,000.
Okay.
Is there a motion to recommend as listed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. All right, so 422, any questions? Or do you want, all right, 422 is good. 423, we never changed this one. 429, 432, 5315. Sorry, I was looking at, oh, that's just a different line.
That's that catch basin thing.
Okay,
It's bold because it's new.
all right, so let's go
Oh,
back.
the supplies though line, Mallory, you've got a difference in there.
Yeah,
Can you go back to the history on that line, Mallory?
sure thing. He ran into a lot of issues FY19 with equipment. He had a lot of things break down.
And then he's right on it on in FY20. Okay. All right. So if you want to slide back up, Mallory, we'll make the recommendations on the rest of the highway stuff.
Okay.
So the motion to recommend 422 as listed by the Board of Selectmen, both salary and expenses. So motion
So moved.
on discussion, second? Somebody?
I'll second it.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Motion to recommend 423 and 429.
So moved.
Motion made, is there a second? Second. On discussion, hearing none, all in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. 432. As recommended by, so where is the difference?
Right here.
Mallory on the, yeah.
And then here, which,
Yeah, I would make a recommendation to follow the town administrator on salaries and the Board of Selectmen on expenses.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. All right, so we're into the 400s now. All right, so we'll go down the health stuff, and if there's a hold, we'll ask for a hold. Any on 433? Keep going. 491. Let's do those two because I know we'll have some questions here like we did last week. Motion to recommend 491 and 433 as recommended by the Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor? All those opposed, the ayes have it. All right, so
I forgot to recommend this stuff.
Board of Health.
So this line here, the conservation perk review, they're gonna need to talk. I think Tom is still here. Because he sent over something on May 8th that I just got yesterday relative to this item.
Okay. Tom, Thanks for hanging out with us all night.
Tom, I've just unmuted you. Fires.
I'm here.
Oh, so mute him, Ally, because he's called in.
Okay, I didn't see that.
He's
There we
good.
go.
Yep, he's good.
Okay, so Tom, there's a question on the health agent conservation perk review. Are you there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm here. I got all kinds of things going on.
We got an echo going on, so
Okay.
we can hear you through your computer.
Tom, lower the volume on your computer. Shut the volume off on your computer during this time.
Mute the volume on your computer, Tom, and then talk into the phone.
Todd, are you there? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Much better.
I'm getting a real bad feedback.
Yeah, he needs to shut the volume off on his tablet or computer, whatever he's got the video on, and then speak into the phone.
How about Todd? Do you want to explain it? Go ahead. Todd, if you want to jump in. You're muted, Todd. Mallory, can you unmute Todd?
Yep, I gotta find him on my list.
Oh, I just unmuted
There we go.
myself.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
so for the last 9 years, what's been happening is when somebody submits for a perk application for septic repair, new construction, it doesn't matter. There's a $25 fee. The conservation agent, who happens to be Charlie Mello, goes out, checks out the site, determines if they can go ahead or if they have to do something with the Conservation Commission before they can do the perk test. That $25 fee, we deposit it, and then he gets paid out $25 per at the end. So it's like a revolving account. It's not treated as one, but that's effectively how it is. But what's been happening is because it wasn't in our budget, at the end of every year, when he submitted his bill, we would have to kind of switch some money around to pay him. We're trying to be more transparent, as Tom said in his letter, and just have it as a line item so it's there and we don't have any surprises at the end of the fiscal year.
So what line was it being paid out of before, Todd? Where would you guys move money from normally?
It was usually 5106, he was considered a health agent, but there was never enough money there. So I don't know the last 9 years. I've only known the last couple.
Yeah.
So we've transferred it from other places. I know when I first started here, there was like 3 months where I wasn't full time, so we had extra money in the budget there. So
you were doing like end of year transfers in order to cover it, so it would always come from a different location?
yes.
I just don't understand how he gets, so the reason I'm 0 is because why wouldn't he just collect his salary as conservation agent for the Conservation Commission as he normally does, and then that would cover this perk review? I mean, for me, it just looks like he's getting paid twice to do the same thing, even though I know he's not. I know that it's different, but it seems like this should just be part of his job as the agent. And that's why I have 0 here.
Well, he's not getting paid differently as the agent. I believe, Tom Pyers, if you're available now, I think he's like the stipend is the same as all the other members. He doesn't get paid an additional salary to be the agent.
He does. He has a line item in the conservation budget.
Oh, isn't that his secretarial duties? He's the person that takes the minutes.
Right, so how is he being paid for 2 different things then? Like you can't do this.
Wait, can I ask a question? Now I feel like I'm confused, and this is for whoever can answer it. It doesn't sound to me like he's being paid for 2 different things. One pay sounds like the secretarial work, and then this sounds like it would be for perk review. Am I
That's
incorrect?
correct. You're absolutely correct.
Minutes is completely different.
Right,
Yes.
you're not allowed to be paid twice for 2 different positions. You can only collect 1 salary essentially. So for the Conservation Commission, a job duties should be created like a description, and whoever does the minutes also does the perk review, maybe, just for conversation's sake, I'm saying that. And then you roll it into 1 line. But
This is why
money for two different positions.
Thank
If I
you,
may?
Administrator.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
This is why I wanted to put this line item over in the Conservation Commission and give him a job description. He was doing the perk reviews for the last 10 years. And when Lisa Caledonia left, who was the conservation office person, that's when Charlie took over the duties. Now, he's only been getting paid for the last 4 years for the conservation. He did those duties about 6 years for no salary, neither here or there. But this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get him a job description and put this 1,500 into the salary of the office person that he's doing, the work he's doing. So I don't know if it's too late to do that or if you would agree to do that.
All right, so my opinion is this is not a discussion that should be taking place at the Finance Committee's budget recommendations, and should be something that should be figured out between the Board of Selectmen, the TA, the Conservation and Board of Health, or Board of Health and Conservation before it comes here. So I'm going to recommend we don't fund it until that all gets straightened out.
Conservation does not have a problem incorporating the perk reviews into their budget, according to Bill Fournette.
Into the budget that they have proposed already?
Yes, I believe they have 4,800 for the clerical duties. I'm just looking to put this 1,500 over there. I mean, we could have went merrily on our way and, you know,
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing here. And let me tell you, it certainly costs a bunch more if the person is doing this now for $25. For some reason, wasn't doing it anymore. I would venture to guess 5 or 6 times more.
Yeah, I just don't understand why we would have conservation perk review under the Board of Health anyway, because it's a conservation function that's
Yes,
necessary. under the
exactly.
Conservation
It's
Commission.
always been there.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I just, I want us to
No,
not have silly ethical,
Yeah.
conflict of interest law stuff.
No, I understand you can't get paid from 2 different
Yeah.
places, which is why was trying to move it over there. And we've had that discussion.
Okay.
so I will make a recommendation that the Finance Committee recommend the 510 budget with 5105, 5106, and the new assistant health agent request and the health agent COA request be recommended. The health agent conservation perk review not be recommended. And then we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation for the remainder of the budget. Does everybody understand that, or?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen vote to remove that health agent perk, whatever you want to call it, remove it from the Board of Health regulations and inspections and insert it into the conservation budget under that line, and just remove that title secretary. We'll have to come up with it, but it will be funded in that line.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? The ayes have it.
All right, so can I have a motion as the way I outlined mine for the FinCom's recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Pete, you're muted. I see you trying to mouth it over there, second.
Sorry about that.
Second.
Second, I'm sorry.
On discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it.
So I'm sorry, so we're funding the assistant?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, and the health agent COA.
Can I have a question though, just point of order? Based on what the selectmen just did they modify the funding of the conservation committee that we already approved?
Yeah, so the FinCom should act on whether or not you want to approve what we did to the Conservation Commission budget or not.
We'll go back to that one at the end.
Okay, it's
All right, because
171.
I believe Mr. Pyers said that there was enough funding there already to cover that, did he not? So I don't know why we just increased the recommendation on that, but okay.
The health agent COA saying the same thing applies that I'm saying, that you can't be paid for two different positions.
Right.
So that's another reason my recommendation there is 0. And I've actually spoken with her and she doesn't care about it.
And town administrator is correct on that because I also spoke with COA and she is fine with deleting that.
Can people just tell me
request there.
up front? Okay, I would amend, friendly amendment that the finance committee recommendation remove the 250 on the health agent.
So
COA health agent.
Correct.
Okay.
So could I get a clarification from Mr. Pyers, please?
Sure.
Tom, I'm looking at 171. There's $4,800 there. Are you saying that the 1,500 here should not be added to that, or should it be?
No, I said it, I'm saying it should be added
All right, okay,
to make that 6,300.
all right, okay, because I was going to change my motion, but all right, I'll leave it the way it was, all right.
Now, I'm not clear, Mr. Pyers. Before I thought you said it could be absorbed into there. Now it's not. So you would need the additional funds.
Within our budget, it could be.
So there's not enough in the conservation budget.
No, there's not.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go back to that one.
Our line 5106 would have been $1,500 higher if we didn't separate it. It's pretty simple stuff.
All right, can you just go back up, Mallory? I just want to, any questions on 519? Okay, keep going, Mallory. 541. Keep going. 542. 543.
uh, 543, the only question,
We'll hold 543. Hold 549. And then, so let's, with the exception of the two that we hold, I make a motion that we follow the, so what was the difference, Mallory, in 542?
It's blank because I needed to verify her figure and I never did. I apologize.
All right, so we'll, all right, so we'll follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation on that one. Was that the same? We'll just start at 541.
This is the difference here.
We
This
had
is
the conversation
additional
on the-
hours.
And we had the conversation on the clothing allowance. There's an increase on this.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know why it's at 400. I think it's 200 for Alice, 200 for Bella, and prime time covers Sheila's. Bella and Sheila are in the contract, the clerical union, so that's contractual. Alice is not elected, and I think you didn't, last year when you took out the clothing allowance, this must have just stayed in there. I don't know if it's your intent to remove it from Alice as well. It would have been past practice, but I don't take one, Chris doesn't take one. The elected officials that have clerical union staff don't take one, so Alice really would be the last person.
So I have a question on the clothing allowance in general, Mallory.
Yeah.
Do we require them to submit?
Not that union.
So we just cut a check?
Yeah. The target.
Not a straight check, though. It's got to run through payroll, right?
It should be running through payroll. If it's not, we're not complying with IRS regulations.
Right.
I think it's every at the end of the year, Chris, I think.
Okay.
You might
We
not
may
have
have to make an
run
adjustment to
into it yet.
W-2s.
Okay, whatever.
Well, it's not something I intend to have stick around. But
I would agree that based on our practice, that one should only be the 200, right?
Yep.
Agreed.
So I would, on 541, I would recommend we follow the town administrator's recommendations.
So moved.
Salaries and also expenses. There's a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. 542. I would make, so Mallory, should we put the number that, all right, so I'd make a recommendation, we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation on budget 542. And 540, can you slide down on 543, Mallory? And 543?
543, did we want to drop the veterans benefits?
That's a rolling number. What
well,
do
I
we-
looked at past, when I came to mine, I looked at past years. It kind of lingers around 40 to 50. So I thought 75 was very
All right,
safe.
so on,
Nobody be in
Matt,
jeopardy.
on expenses of that, we would follow the town administrator's recommendation. Is there a motion and second to that?
So moved.
Second.
On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. You got that, CJ?
Mr. Swat,
Yes, Mrs. Goulart.
Department 542,
Yeah.
is this going to be operational July 1st?
I think that's an unknown right now. That's one of those, I think we put it in here and at town meeting, we would reduce it if it's not going to be operational.
Okay,
We
thank
have
you.
a meeting on Wednesday, or tomorrow, just to let everybody know about that program with the executive board.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question. Following under our principles, we've run all the way through on 549. I would recommend that we fund 549 at the same level we funded it in FY20.
So
Could I speak on that?
Sure, Mr. Pacheco.
Yes, you said that you were going to review the minutes of the different meetings that were held, because I explained that we reduced it from 3,000 to 2,000. Did you have that opportunity?
I reviewed the minutes, and there was no mention of $250 a month.
If you look at the video, as you know, the minutes don't say everything that's happened. If you look at the video of the meeting of September 25th, you will see that I say that I'm recommending that we pay the ADA coordinator $25 an hour for up to 10 hours per month. And at that same meeting, because the original warrant had said $3,000, I asked the board to reduce it to $2,000 because we only have eight months left in the fiscal year. If you're seeing me talk about different budgets, I look at what has been appropriated in past years and what's been spent, and I don't like the fact that we don't spend some of the money that's been appropriated, so I've been reducing. I recommend that we reduce some budgets. So the warrant originally said $25 an hour for 10 hours, and then we changed the warrant after discussion with the town administrator that it should be a stipend. We changed it to $2,000. At the October 28th special meeting, when I advocated that we pay a salary to we pay the ADA coordinator, I mentioned in that meeting that it's $25 an hour for 10 hours a month for the remaining fiscal year. So if you look at the video of September 25th, you get into about 31 minutes of the meeting, you'll hear me discussing, let's reduce it from 3,000 to 2,000 because we only have 8 months left in the season. Let me give you an example. I got elected on June 28th. The salary for selectmen at that time was $7,500. It was just recently reduced to $5,000. I only worked 2 days. I shouldn't get paid for the whole fiscal year. I shouldn't get paid for the 2 months that there was a vacancy. I got paid for the 2 days remaining in that season. So when I asked that it be reduced, this goes under the category, no good deed goes unpunished. I reduced it because I knew that we weren't going to spend $3,000. I'm asking that the Finance Committee support the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen that it be $3,000, which was the original figure. And the only reason why it was reduced was because we only had 8 months left in the season. The meeting was October 28th. We would hire somebody. It would not be for 1 year. It'd be for 8 months. And that's why I'm asking that it the figure that was originally discussed.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Pacheco, I, in all due respect, I think the Finance Committee last year didn't want to create the ADA coordinator's position in general. So what you're asking us to do is to not follow a process that we have run through the entire budget process right now of not increasing stipends at any level above what they were funded in the FY20 budget. So, you know, I personally think that it should be one of our full-time employees takes this on as one of their duties. And, you know, we just have increased hours of proposing an increase of hours of a person in the Board of Selectmen's office who could technically act as our ADA coordinator. So I, as the chairman at this point, will not break from the precedent of what we've set of increasing stipends FY20 into FY21. You know, I don't know what the rest of the committee's thoughts are. You know, I still believe that this should be done by either our building inspector or our town administrator. You know, I believe the selectmen have set up an ADA commission, which should have a role in guiding what the ADA coordinator is going to be doing or not doing. So I just, in all due respect, and I guess we could go back and watch the video, but, you know, I think the role of this Finance Committee last year wasn't even at that point. I think it was on town meeting floor that it got accepted. I think it may have been that it was at, because we pulled it from the annual town meeting, it got done at special town meeting in the fall.
Correct. And at that special town meeting, what you said was that you didn't think it was appropriate to appoint or create the ADA coordinator at a special town meeting, that it should be at the annual town meeting. And the second thing was that one board member of the Finance Committee, I don't remember who it was, said that we should not create this position until we see if we get the ADA grant. Well, guess what? We got the ADA grant. And that's why I'm sticking with the original figure of 3,000. It's not an increase because we only funded it. Like I said, it's no good deed goes unpunished. I asked that it be reduced because we only had 8 months left. It wasn't going to, we shouldn't fund it for the full year when we were only going to have the position for 8 months. So it's not an increase in the stipend. It's what it should be.
Ed, I've got a couple of points on that. On the stipend, I don't, in my opinion, we don't do stipends based on an hourly rate because, I mean,
That's correct.
Rate be. Second, you know, the point of that getting the grant was then that the committee could determine whether a coordinator was needed separately from someone within an existing town employee. And third, you know, we had done it. There was a study. Mallory had pulled together some information based on towns of similar sizes, and out of 13 towns, all of them use either a town administrator, town manager, director of personnel, or fire chief as the ADA. So we were not saying that an ADA coordinator wasn't needed. We were saying that it needs to be in someone else's job description who already exists, and that we don't need to fund an additional $2,000 or $3,000.
Well, my position has been that we need an ADA coordinator who's trained in that field and can't just assign it to a selectman or a support staff or whatever. And we presently have someone who is properly trained and has taken the proper courses to be an ADA coordinator. And in the past, we've had a select person be our ADA coordinator, and that person just reacted to when there was a problem. We're trying to be proactive to avoid any lawsuits. I worked at the time, district court for 25 years. We had to shut the building down because we didn't have an elevator, and we weren't being proactive, and we had to move, and then we ended up building a new courthouse. So I'm just trying to save the town some money, and I don't know what else to add to this. You can take your vote. I don't want to belabor this, but I did review the minutes. I reviewed the meetings, and I clearly expressed to the town as well as the Board of Selectmen my thinking behind it. So.
And Selectman Pacheco, as I always say, there's always town meeting vote.
Exactly.
We are only making a recommendation.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes, Mrs. Goulart.
since I'm just the selectman who had that title from 2007 to probably around 2013 or 14, I will also point out that during that entire time, the building that is called Town Hall was considered accessible. The incident that arose was because the gentleman who came in from the Department of Agriculture, for whom the sewer loans were processed through, found that the lower level of Town Hall, where the sewer office was located, was not handicapped accessible because it didn't have the push button doors and the proper hardware. As far as the elevator situation went, we knew what the cost was going to be, and the acceptable solution to the gentleman who raised the issue was, if anyone needs services, they come in the lower level and call upstairs, and the appropriate person will go down. Now, no, I didn't take courses, but I also know that when situations arose, and there was more than one, I went to the proper people. Like, I immediately went to the building commissioner, Mr. Lawrence, and Mr. Ferry got involved, and we looked at the town hall, and that's when the decision was made that we would put those push buttons on both levels, the front door and the lower level, the reconfiguration of parking spaces to make them handicapped accessible were done, and everything we did was fine. And then I was succeeded by Mr. Medeiros, a full-time firefighter. And during the term that he served and the work he did, we did not have problems. Now, I'm not questioning the qualifications of Mr. Gale. However, I find it insulting that somebody says it was done by a selectman. I can tell you we did the job, and I wasn't the only one, and we worked as a team, and we saved this town a lot of money, and we didn't get sued.
All right. We can go back and forth. I think we all know where everybody stands on it. So I would recommend, as we followed, and I'm only recommending this because we're just following it as our previous stipends. I think there are some concerns on how we're doing this, but that's not for determination tonight. But I will recommend that we continue with the $2,000 stipend as was funded in FY20.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it.
Before we move on from this group, can we go back to 519? I didn't get that recommendation or that motion. I think we've got a grouping.
Sorry, I think we didn't do it.
Yeah. Are we skipping that one?
No.
Oh, okay.
I would propose that we follow the, I guess either on Board of Selectmen's recommendation on 519.
Ed, I think this one would be the TA because they cut the communications to cover the overtime.
Yeah, I was just doing the salary portion, Pete.
Okay.
And that we follow the TA's recommendation on expenses in 519.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
And that was based on last week's discussion. So Mallory, what?
This is the difference. Again, I kept the
2%.
Proposed union.
Oh, okay, so recommend we follow Board of Selectmen's recommendation in, what number was that?
This is 610.
610?
Personnel and expenses?
And personnel and expenses.
So moved.
So a second? On discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. 6:30, we follow the TA's recommendation. On 6:30, do we actually spend that money on the town historian?
She does a little bit. I think it depends on what she has going on.
18 was the last time we spent anything?
Yeah, so I would recommend we follow the Board of Selectmen's request of 250 on 690. 691, the Board of Selectmen's recommendation on 691, Board of Selectmen's recommendation on 698. You can keep going. Yeah, so is there a motion to follow those recommendations?
So
moved.
Second.
On discussion here now, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Oh, we're almost there. Almost there.
Almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I know. Those poor.
I know this committee. They want to get it all done tonight, so they'll have to come back on Thursday. Today is Tuesday, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able.
It still is, Ed.
710 and 751 and keep going, Mallory. 752 has nothing. So motion to follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation on debt lines.
So
710, 751. Motion made and seconded. On discussion here. None. All in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. 911. 911 and 912 to follow the TA's recommendations.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion here, none. All those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. Oh, I killed the one. 914, 915, 916 to follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation through 916.
So moved.
Second.
919 to follow the town administrator's recommendation on 919.
So moved.
And then do we spend any of this tuition money in the last couple of years?
We have two people who use it. One has used it a couple years prior. He's continued, and then another person has since joined in that.
So I would recommend we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation on 920.
So moved.
Second.
We expect no settlements or court judgments. That's always good. I'm assuming, Mallory, under 945, that's a typo?
Yep. That's a 0.
Did the Board of
they must-
Selectmen make a recommendation on that?
They- I'm verifying my notes right now. Sorry.
That's okay. I would recommend we follow the town administrator's recommendation on 945.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? On discussion here, none. All those in favor, all those opposed? And then on 600, the sewer enterprise fund, I would, we follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendation with the exception of we recommend removing the 2% increase on the salaries of the chairman and the members. So it would bring it back to FY20 levels on those two lines, 5101 and 5102. And that we follow the Board of Selectmen recommendations on expenses for the sewer enterprise.
CJ, on that, on those two, 5101 and 5102, there's, yeah, there you go.
Mrs. Aaronstein?
Yeah.
On 5211, Department 600, I have a note that says, hold on that, we were questioning electricity.
Yes, and then you had asked specifically if they were aware of our aggregation amount and why, like how they derived that figure. And they had said because they were trying to get more on target with previous year spending, and they are mostly with TMLP, so they don't get that aggregate amount.
Okay.
All right, so we'll follow the Board of Selectmen's recommendations. And I think that completes the budget portion. So now, once those numbers are plugged in, can we go over to the excess and can we plug the Finance Committee's recommendations into the excess capacity page to see where we're at? Chris, do we have the ability to do that?
That just popped up.
Right here, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Wait, nope.
Yeah, no, right up at right where you were before, Mallory.
This one?
You could just formula over to the proposed budget bottom line.
Oh no, hold on, I messed it up again. All right, how do I, Chris, help? Because I don't want to mess this up.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit, Mallory, hit the equal sign. And I want you to point over to the proposed budget master tab.
This?
And not that bottom line, because that includes the sewer enterprise. You want to go up above to the general fund. You want to go there
Okay.
and hit enter.
Look at that.
Well, that's fancy. Okay.
All right, so flow us down to the bottom, Mallory, and see what it puts us at.
Do we want to adjust our state aid or no?
Just leave it as is for now.
Okay. Levy. Also, we didn't change this. 74. Oh no.
74 under the levy limit. Correct?
Actually, you're 74 over the levy
Over.
limit.
We are. So,
Net.
all right, so I just want to look at some other. All right, can you flow back up, Mallory? Oh, we haven't discussed. So, yeah, well, this doesn't include us putting, do we have a balance, Chris, on the, or either Chris, on the ambulance fund?
Sorry, I did have that information recently, but basically, I want to tell you it's like $750,000 right now. But don't.
So our annual use of about 350 could be on target?
Yeah, so historically, what it looks like is the contribution from the ambulance fund has been roughly 50% of the ambulance operating budget.
All right, so technically, we are, if you plug our 350, what we normally use from the ambulance fund into our other revenue sources, we're actually $275,000 below the levy limit.
That'd be correct.
Ed, do we have any equipment payments out of the ambulance fund, or are we all paid off?
Everything's paid off.
Yeah, everything's paid off. I think that's why we talked about for the new truck, could we use some ambulance fund money?
Okay,
And then that'll be a different discussion.
okay.
We
Mr.
did
Chairman?
fund something out of it last year, didn't we? Like the ventilation system in one of the.
It was an exhaust, maybe, Chief?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imo vent?
No, that wasn't funded out of the ambulance fund. I think the only thing was the new ambulance.
Yeah, we paid cash for ambulance.
Mallory, that's in the wrong place.
Yeah, I messed that up.
Oh, there was something we took out of the ambulance fund mid last year because we had quite a debate around it. Why?
But they anything to do with the firefighters union contract?
No, we had
Yes,
originally,
Wasn't it?
we had at that special town meeting, they had voted, I don't even know if it made it
Can't
to
hear
town
you.
meeting, to take the active shooter.
Yeah.
Chief,
Yeah.
can you speak a little closer? It's just hard to hear you a little bit. That's all. There you are.
Right, talk about
Sorry.
shooting. We had active shooter kits, the $18,000.
Oh, that's right.
Shooter kit was originally taken from there, but it was supposed to be split between police and fire.
Right.
So Bob and I ended up funding those out of our budgets in FY19.
Right,
Didn't have to take anything.
right.
Yeah, I remember that.
So Mallory, that should go up under like line 20. Right, yeah.
Yeah, right
Other
on,
available funds. All right, let me get rid of this.
put it on line 24.
Here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, line 24 on
Yeah.
the ambulance receipts, yeah. It should go in as a negative.
So now if you go back to the bottom,
the-
it should show us under the levy limit.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can also do the cable. You guys fund the cable folks out of their enterprise fund, out of their license agreement fund for an accurate picture. I don't know if you want to do that.
No, yeah, well, that is always good because we need to go over to the, so this is going to be my question. I know we spent a lot of time and got through the budget. Do you guys want to continue on tonight and go through the special articles, or would you like to come back for about an hour on Thursday?
We're
I
not
can't
posted on
post.
Thursday.
I can't post. We can do Friday.
Oh, we didn't have Thursday posted?
No, this was supposed to be our if necessary meeting.
Oh.
If necessary.
Or we could do next Tuesday.
That is May 19th.
Yeah, group discussion on that. What do you guys want to do?
I'm
Pete,
fine.
Scott,
Of the
Mallory,
list of the list of warrant special articles we have, are there any that we know for sure cannot be or should not be voted on at the annual town meeting and should be moved to the fall? Because aren't we signing the warrant tomorrow night?
Yeah. But you can put them up, you can put them on the warrant. You would just table or
Right.
take whatever action at the town meeting.
Well, Nancy, it depends on what department you ask.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
just,
Zarate.
and I'm only speaking as myself. My colleagues have their own opinions, I'm sure. I think for me, tomorrow, the Board of Selectmen, I believe, I could be wrong, Chairman Pacheco, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're going to make our recommendations on the warrant articles, and I think it would be helpful for me personally to know. And if you don't do it, fine. But I would like at least to have an idea of what you think before we go in there.
Okay. I'm okay, but I'm going to put a hard cutoff at 10 o'clock. Is that okay with everybody?
That's okay with me.
Okay. All right. I already got a couple of chat messages saying they wanted to keep going, so.
Yes, go FinCom.
All right, so now that we know we have, so Mallory, what was that number on under the levy limit?
So I added in the cable right here,
Yep,
and it's now 307.
that's good. Good job.
Okay, and so here's one more curveball. If the regional district does not come to the number you're looking for, how is it going to affect this under the levy limit?
It would take about 150,000 off of it.
167,000.
160, okay, about 167,000.
Mr. Chairman, can that final number, whatever the number that gets voted on from the district, can that not be lowered on town meeting floor?
So, yeah, yes, it can, but the but is basically you are voting yes or no on what the school, the school, if we voted a lower number, it would go back to the school committee.
Yes.
They would either accept it or they would send it back.
So we would be Rehoboth
Yes,
of
you're correct.
2020.
Yes, you're
Yes,
correct.
2021.
But that's why normally, Brett, in the past, we go in hand with the
Yeah.
school and they understand it. I, as the chairman who walks it through, won't go on the floor and have that debate unless we are hand in hand and we've had open discussion about it at the end of the day.
I was not in that room, Mr. Chairman. Is your gut feeling though that the people there representing the district understood where we were coming from and that we plan to support the schools, but that we may not be able to do it fully, you know,
I would say some, but not all. Would you agree with that, Mallory?
Yes.
Yeah, some, but not all.
I think they focus on the wrong things.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the superintendent will take that message back to the school committee tonight, and then I'll have a better feeling for that, and I will share that with the group.
Thank you.
So even if, let's say, our number is acted on favorably by the school committee, we still don't know what number Rehoboth is looking at. Is that right?
Correct. So I feel comfortable with the number that we have. We'll see at the end of the day. So let's move over to the special articles so we don't get bogged down. So the easy two is I would ask the finance committee to recommend the requests of the CPC as proposed by Mr. Rhines last week.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, the ayes have it. I would ask on the ladder truck, I would ask the fire chief, does he believe that is something that we could pay for out of the ambulance fund?
I'm fine with that if that's where you want to go with it.
So I would recommend a transfer of 60,000 from the ambulance fund for the purchase of the ladder truck.
And I think we, a few years ago, we said we really wanted to differentiate between the two budgets. And we didn't want to use ambulance fund for fire specific equipment.
Okay, so here's
and Ed, quite honestly, I would make the motion that we fund this out of stabilization, capital stabilization, because we had already had this on the books for probably more than 15 times what we're paying for this thing.
Yeah. So, but Robert, here's what I would say, because we do believe we have over 700,000 in the ambulance fund. I personally, what I would do in this case, from a financially good financial management standpoint, knowing there are other things in here that we would look towards the capital stabilization for, is I would do this as a raise and appropriate and then increase our transfer from the ambulance fund out of other financing sources by $60,000, because then we're technically funding the ambulance fund and we're raising and appropriating to purchase a ladder truck.
Do 410 instead of 350.
Yep, which I think we did in the past. I think
that we have definitely done, but we need to make sure that we're paying for it.
I absolutely get where you're coming from on capital stabilization, but I think there are some other items in here that we may want to look at capital stabilization rather than when we have the ability to utilize some additional ambulance fund money.
Right, and I'm fine with that, Ed. I'm fine with increasing our ambulance fund
transfer
to offset the ambulance budget, and then do a raise and appropriate for this.
I would recommend we raise and appropriate 60,000 for the ladder truck.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. So is the electric car something we can put off until the fall, or is it something
It is if you want to, I just won't have the grant for $7,500.
All right, then I will make a recommendation that we transfer from free cash $37,000 for the purchase of electric car.
So moved.
Second.
I would also recommend that we transfer from free cash $8,500 for the radar trailer.
So moved.
Second.
I will recommend that we raise and appropriate $59,025.80 for the first cruiser. And that we hold to discuss out of stabilization for the, because Mallory gave me some more insight on the second vehicle is not strictly a cruiser or SUV. It is a more of a truck vehicle that can go off-road. Is that how you explain it?
Yeah.
And could pull the boat if necessary.
Right.
Be fine to drive up at the baseball fields, Mallory?
Go in the boat?
Go in the boat.
That was excellent.
So I did get from Karen on the, we'll do the sweeper at the end. We can get through some of these other ones really quick. I would recommend we transfer from free cash $17,003 for the purchase of the mowers.
That's not free cash.
It's
Yep.
for, it's a special town meeting article.
Oh, okay, so we don't have to.
Leftover.
I would recommend we do the transfer as from Article 16 of the special town meeting of 1028 for the purchase of the mowers.
And you'll have over $9,000 left in that article coming back.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Tom. I would recommend we transfer $10,500 from free cash for the planning board copier.
Did you want to see if he could put that in this year's?
I would like to, but I think if he, let's caveat that one, that if he cannot, we will transfer from free cash. If it can't be purchased this year. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So,
Mike Colbert.
yeah, I'm just, as you can tell, I've held the big ticket items until the end. So Mallory, so.
These should be auto-populated, so this should be your totals.
All right. So,
minus this.
I would recommend that we transfer from free cash $61,407 for the second police vehicle. That would still leave us $100,000 in free cash.
Minus the 41,000 for the snow and ice deficit, if we don't fund that.
If you do that, or you can transfer from available funds right now in our FY20 budget.
Yeah, right. Oh, so, well, that'll be a separate discussion because that 42,000 is actually already accounted for, correct, Chris, in the excess capacity page?
Yes, yes, it is.
Because that's how we've always done it.
Right.
And I know Mallory has a different philosophy on that.
Yeah, just so you're aware, Ed, before you joined, we had a pretty detailed conversation on this one.
Okay.
They were
Thanks,
plotting
Scott.
against you.
Oh, you guys disagree with me? I like it.
No,
Completely.
Ed, we talked about how it's at 50,000, and I talked to them about how years ago it was 35 for the longest time, and we went to 50, and why we've held it at 50.
Well, because the state recommends that you never go higher than that on that because they allow you to run a deficit and raise it on your recap sheet. So, we have never made the choice of paying it off in that year. We've always raised it. So it's there. We can have a further discussion on it. How I'm not opposed to it, but I just think it's great when it's a year that it's only 40,000 to do that. But are we going to do that when we have the years that it's 200,000?
No. But with this outlook, with what's going on FY21, I want to do it because I just want to go in with nothing against us.
We
But
always technically
know.
go in with nothing against us because we always raise it in our recap.
I guess I want more on the levy. That's fine.
Right, so
I'm not gonna say anything else.
All right, so all we have left is the discussion on the road sweeper, the town hall renovations, and the culvert match grant. So, on the sweeper, Karen sent out, if I can find it in my email here, she sent me the breakdown that Tom had put together for the special that had, if we leased it. And it would be a 5-year lease to purchase. Bear with
You need
me.
to grab it, Ed?
I have it right here.
Okay.
All right. So if we were, Tom Ferry, is it the Elgin Street Sweeper or the Elgin Pelican?
Pelican.
Pelican. So with the Pelican, a 5-year with annual and arrears at a 4.89% is $52,962 1 year from the lease date. So it's a 5-year. So roughly we'd be paying about $255,000 versus purchasing it at $235,000. And this was in July. So Tom, do you think those rates would stay roughly the same, or is the interest rate will be potentially could be lower?
That's above me. I'm sorry.
So what is the committee's pleasure? Obviously, if we're going to purchase it, we're going to have to take it out of capital stabilization.
This is something that's been on the books for the capital outlay since the beginning when it first reconvened.
Yep.
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. What year is that? I think my records show it's a 96.
I believe so. Yeah, it's either 95, 96. Yes.
I mean, this is something that has been even when we first put it on the books, I went back and looked at my records. The price of this hasn't really gone up all that much from when we first looked at it. But now we're talking about a 96 that back in 2015 stayed 5 more years. Parts are getting hard to come by. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got one person in the department who knows how to work on that thing?
To repair it, yeah, the mechanic. But
Yeah.
no, multiple people can operate it.
Yeah.
We used to have 2. That was my intention, to get 2 sweepers back. Right now our sweeper's out of service. We got the town half done. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Center Street needs it really bad. After I saw Nancy when I ran by the post office, I ran down Center Street. There was a lot of sand.
Not happening.
Mr. Ferry sent an email to me late tonight, just before I got ready to try to sign on, that informed me that my street sweeper was broken and is in need of repair.
So I would make a recommendation that we transfer from capital stabilization $55,000 for the first year of a 5-year lease for an Elgin Pelican for a sweeper.
I'd be on board for that.
Tom, what's the price I know $52,962 to lease it. What's the price to buy it?
$235.
Roughly $235, Pete.
Yeah.
Right.
And Pete, 5 years ago, we had priced this thing at $220.
I'm assuming, Tom, you'll either go back and try and buy a leftover 2019, or we'll be looking at a 2020.
Correct.
If we lease, does this have to be in the operating budget, or can the first year come out of an article?
It can come out of an article, because that's how we've always done the purchases of the ambulance. Has always been an article.
Don't you have to approve the full amount of the lease?
No.
or of the purchase? No?
No, we've always just approved the 1-year lease each year.
But aren't we committing the town to the 5 years?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
Typically in those lease agreements, you can put in that the lease agreement is subject to annual appropriations, so that you basically, Scott, what would happen is if town meeting decided not to appropriate in fiscal 22, we turn the Elgin back into Elgin. We have to give up the street sweeper. They get it back.
We give Ed a broom the next time he runs
Yeah,
upstairs.
right, exactly. No. But yeah,
And your gas-powered blower too.
Yeah, that's how we did this wouldn't be the first vehicle that we've done this way. We actually, I think, at one time looked at doing police cruisers via lease, via special article.
Hey, Tom,
We did the fire rescue truck for 10 years that way.
I got a question for Tom.
Yes.
Hey, Tom, is that coming from CN Wood?
Yes.
Okay.
State bid list already confirmed.
Yeah, we do a lot of business with them.
Okay. All right, so there was a motion. Is there a second to, I think Kevin made the motion. Is there a second to that?
Second.
On discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor, all's opposed, the ayes have it. Town hall renovations. So,
I didn't get what you asked for. I had asked Mr. Aguirre, and I know that he's out straight, so I'm not really hard on
he
him.
sent me a text today, but I was just out straight and didn't have a chance to get back to him. So, I would recommend that at this time, we don't put the whole 165, but we set something aside for them to continue on the process of this project and relook at the additional funds in the fall.
I had asked before, and since Chris Laviolette said, he was giving us some ballpark numbers of what he's guessing might be in the budget when we close the fiscal year. Is there any way we can buy supplies and materials out of existing budgets so that we have some of that up front going into the new year?
Maybe.
Sorry, is Chief McGee still on? Is he still on the call?
Yes, sir.
Do you have your radio on in the background?
No, I do not.
Well, there's an awful lot of background. Sorry, I apologize, but I'm just getting a lot of background feedback.
Me too.
A lot of buzzing.
Me too.
If you're not talking, can you mute yourself, everyone?
That's better. Thank you. Sorry, Nancy, can you ask that question again?
Yeah, I had mentioned this before. Since tonight we were talking, I had said to you, what's your ballpark guess of what will be left in the FY20 budget? If it's, June 29th today, and what do you think is going to be left? And you threw a number out there. So my question is, and I think you're relatively accurate. You're coming in with a number that we have seen in the past. So my question is, can we buy some supplies and materials out of the FY20 budget for the town hall renovations so that we can reduce this 165 now, and in July, hopefully we can put the labor with it and start doing renovations?
Honestly, Nancy, I'd probably recommend against that right now, even though we are there's an anticipation or an expectation of there being roughly $1 million turned back in budget. You'd be better off letting it go to free cash and then taking up the vote at fall town meeting to continue with the town hall renovations. That would be my recommendation right now. I think that would be the cleanest and the safest route to go, even though we know that there may be $1 million available come end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so to get back to what Mr. Swartz was saying then, so Ed, what kind of a number are you thinking about for the June town meeting?
So, here's my two recommendations on the last two articles that we have. I recommend, based on where we are to the levy limit, that we raise and appropriate $75,000 for town hall renovations, and that we transfer from stabilization $150,000 for the culvert grant match, knowing that if we get the match and the money comes, that money will be returned back to the stabilization account. Those are my last two recommendations.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I fully support that. I think with the town hall renovations, when we present that article, we just have to make it clear, because we came back to the well a couple times on Old Town Hall. We just should make it clear up front that we're not asking for it all, because there's a little bit of uncertainty, or a lot of uncertainty. So we should make that clear to people.
Right, and we want to continue on the project, and we know that renovations need to continue to happen at Town Hall. This will allow that project to continue, but there will be additional funds necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone disagree with my rationale?
Yeah, just, I think somebody's gonna need to spell out what the 75 is being spent on too.
That's a good point, Peter. By annual town meeting, Jim should have time to, or we should have time to sit with him and really delineate what we can start with that initial 75. So
Yeah,
we'll make sure we have that in hand.
Yeah, and to the point earlier, if and I throw this onto the town administrator to work with Jim, if there are some things that he can do in this current fiscal year, transferring some available funds into the building maintenance lines, that if he has to overexpend a building maintenance line, that we can transfer from some available funds we may have somewhere else before the end of the year, that if it's $10,000 or $15,000, then that's $10,000 or $15,000 later on we don't have to spend on doing some of the, because this is an ongoing project. This isn't something we're just starting.
Right, and Ed, that's what I was looking for, because Mike has been working in the lower level of Town Hall now, and he's doing some things. So I wasn't looking for a big chunk of money. I was looking, quite frankly, for any money that might be available.
Yep.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
So there is money left over in the demolition account, or the demolition line item within Department 192. I want to tell you, my recollection is it's somewhere around $30,000. My understanding is that money is typically to cover the town's cost of having to demolish dilapidated properties that I would assume we've taken through the tax taking process. Quite frankly, I'm not sure why the town is incurring any expense. There should be a demolition lien that's issued to the property, and
there is, but there are situations where we have to demolish the building, and then we put the liens on it, and we collect it at either when the property is sold, or from the homeowner along the way when they're trying to sell the property. But
okay,
I
understand the liability issue.
We've gone through this many times with the building inspector, so.
That particular line was funded in excess from special town meeting to take care of the James Briggs house, but we are still just awaiting the delay bylaw. So that's spoken for a little bit.
All right, so is there a motion to, did we already do a motion on the 75 and the 150?
No, we didn't. But before
Okay,
we do
is there a
that,
motion to recommend raise and appropriate 75,000 for the renovations of Town Hall, and then transfer 150,000 from capital stabilization for the Brick Street culvert?
So moved.
question on that first point.
Yes, go ahead,
So
Scott.
194 for raise and appropriate. How much does that leave us under the levy limit?
Oh, let me add that. 194,026, right? 194,026. Chris, do you have a thing for special articles?
No, I don't, but Mallory, I think if you just put it up above the state assessment line. Oh, yeah, put it under the state assessment line, or up above, sorry.
Right here?
Yeah, put it right there.
What was my amount? 194,026.
May have to adjust the formula just below there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Boy, you millennial types are really good with these forms.
So
that,
my rationale behind that question, that's still great. If the school amends it back up on the floor to the full requested amount, that leaves us $6,000 on the levy limit.
Roll the dice.
That's pretty damn close.
And that, and, you know, I also believe that new growth number, based on when we do the recaps, is going to be much higher than 200,000. I looked at, Chris sent me the last 10 years. We haven't been at 200,000 in probably 15 years.
If I may add anecdotally, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So today, there's a receipt for a commercial permit that totaled roughly $90,000. Now, I know it just shifts the pie in terms of total taxation, but it just means that there'll be less impact on the residential tax rate as far as new growth is concerned. You can expect a higher percentage of new growth to come potentially from commercial building right now. I don't know exactly what the permit was issued for. I just know that it was a large permit.
Yeah, so.
probably a
So
solar.
I feel really comfortable with the numbers that we came up with tonight.
We also anticipate state aid going down, correct? So, I mean.
Yes. So even if we took that 10% out, that's about $100,000, and we still sit at 75. And I still think there's a little bit of room there.
You want me to plug the number in just to see? Or no?
Nah, it's fine. It's like $80,000. It'll put us at about $90,000 under the levy limit.
So we were also on our town meeting warrant is to establish a tax work-off program, which we now, if we're $6,000 under the levy limit, will not have the ability to go forward with. And this is stated for the benefit of the Board of Selectmen. We're going to have to revisit that that piece.
You mean like at a future town meeting?
No, well, right. I'm going to recommend to you that we're going to have to hold this because we don't have the space on the levy to provide the subsidy.
So I would request that you guys have further discussion, knowing full well the Finance Committee will have at least 1 or 2 more meetings before we go to a town meeting anyway. So if we have to have further discussion, if we have to have discussion of it at a Finance Committee meeting after, I would just give you guys a chance to discuss it further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing.
We're past 10 o'clock, Chris. I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
All right, excellent. Thank you. The state assessment figure, that's a solid figure based on the governor's original budget.
Yep.
I think you folks should be considering putting a lot of pressure on Representative Haddad with the understanding that if they're going to cut state revenue, they've got to cut state assessments too. It's got to be both way. It can't go one way.
Right.
There's no way that the state's got to share the pain too.
Yep. Yeah. So some of the offsets need to.
I would say at least 10%. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but it's got to come down. If they're going to cut revenue 10%, they should be looking to cut assessments by the same 10%.
Good point. I will share that. I'm sure Brett will. He has more conversations with her than I do. So
interesting.
Thank you all. I know we did a lot of marathon sessions this year to get through this, but we have a recommended budget now, and I think we covered pretty much everything. We don't always agree on everything, but I feel pretty comfortable with what we did. And Mallory, please share our recommendations with the department heads. So, you know, some will be okay with it. Some will have some disagreement with it, but we tried to be as rational and use as much rationale as possible in developing what we did. So I thank everybody for everything, and thanks for putting up with me and me being late tonight because I was doing that water district thing. But thank you. So I don't know if anybody has any closing comments before we adjourn.
Yeah, now we all have that long drive home, so drive carefully.
We're tabling the conversation.
Here's the positive my wife would say. I'm not going to spend a half hour talking to Peter in the parking lot after the meeting anymore. I'm going to go straight home. So, but is there a motion to adjourn?
No move.
Do you have some?
Nope. So thank you to the selectmen, town administrator, town accountant. I appreciate you being here for all of the meetings. Selectmen Tom Ferry and Chris McGee, thanks. Much appreciated.
Thank
So,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, and we are adjourned.
Good night.
Have a good
Aye.
night.
Everybody.